Hello everyone, this is Z. We're back with Mind High, and my co-host Ali is right in front of me.
What's up, guys? How's it going? Another day of podcast, right?
Yep, we're back.
We're back, and we also have Shaz with us,
Yo, what's going on, guys?
the man on the keyboards.
Resident fact checker is back.
Resident, I don't live here.
And then we also have our two guests joining us, Adi. So what's up, man?
Hello, this is Aditya.
How's it going? And then Satya, right?
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yep. You got it right. Hello, guys.
Cool.
Yo.
You guys were referred to us from our last guest, Hazel, which I thought was a really cool one. I enjoyed it a lot. So, and she, mentioned you and that you would be a good guest for our podcast. Particularly talking about like more physics and the Big Bang Theory and
Science, bitch.
Science, yeah, pretty much. And as soon as she said that, it's kind of weird, like how excited I got, because it's very. The more you get into like I don't know, science, or like we call it being woke as fuck. When you start,
We're very pretentious here.
when you start waking up and start understanding what reality is, and you bump into someone that is thinking the same thing, like that like-minded talk, it gets interesting. We just get happy there is someone else that we can talk to about these kind of things, because I feel like it's a very small community, and it sucks that it is. So kind of glad that you guys are here, and hopefully we'll have a good conversation today as well.
We all left the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. You took the blue pill or the red pill, right?
Yeah.
I hope so. Or we left the Matrix to enter another Matrix. You never know.
Oh, multiverse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big fans of the multiverse theory here.
Yeah.
So like what I had in mind to kind of start off the conversation today was like last weekend it was like I want to say about 6 hour like a heated conversation in my family group chat, because one of my brother-in-laws shared a picture, and it said like was a deductive and inductive reasoning. It's the philosophical reasoning of how you approach science, and then he concluded that because of this method, theories are always changing. So why should I believe in what they're saying now when tomorrow it could be something else? And that and I had a conversation with him like a few months ago too. So like it kind of like got me fired up, because like I'm like, that's not a good approach. Because of theories you have the cell phone that's allowing you to text through space and time from sitting from your home. If it wasn't for theories, we wouldn't have any of these things that we have today.
Before anything is anything, it's a theory first, and it all starts from a plan, a theory, and then it goes from there.
And why you should believe a theory is because theories can change. That's the nice thing about it.
Yeah.
Right.
When you have a religious text, for instance, I'm sure they're coming from a religious point of view. It's that it's set in stone.
Right.
But science can change every day, because the more facts you get, the more you understand.
Right.
And that's how it should be. Because the universe is always changing. It's not just is.
I don't think it's always changing. Our understanding of it is changing.
You're right.
The laws of nature will always be the same
in
the universe. I think our just understanding of it will kind of change, right?
Yeah. I think what you said about deductive versus inductive,
right?
And that's the constant debate between a lot of people who speak as religious scholars and scientists.
Yeah.
So when you say deduce, when you say deduce, you have a traceability of a fact to another fact. Right. You're going that, I deduce this because what is the missing number in this chain? And it's 1, 3, 5, 11.
Right.
And you're like, 7 and 9.
Right.
So now that is deduction based on these facts.
Right. You start from the top and you deduct down. And you can say if it's true for this, then it also must be true for that. That. So I think like the famous quote or something like that is, if you can say, like if you can say all men are immortal, right? Yeah. Then I can say Z is also immortal. Because if by saying that all men are, then I can. If that's a fact, then I can say that you are and you are, since you both are.
It implies.
Yeah,
It implies, yeah. And when you say inductive reasoning, The inductive process, actually, I think it's more mathematical when it comes to that. And you say that something happens this way, so this thing must happen that way.
Yeah, so it's more prediction based. Right?
Yeah, and when we say, prediction is again, it's probably a correct word in the general context.
Right.
But inductive reasoning goes on when people were predicting number series and all those things. And I've read about it actually in high school.
Right.
At some point of time when you have these math scholars sitting together and thinking about how inductive, by law of induction, they call it, by law of induction. And that's the word clue there. That
right.
You're inducing something is more of a sensation or a feel. That, I feel that this might happen that way. That does not lead for you to actually stand in court and say, this matches this,
Right.
That doesn't work that way. And that is where deductive reasoning, and we think that that's a much more higher ground. Sorry.
No problem.
A higher ground that you take, and that's a probably more clearer path to actually explaining each and every person, irrespective of whether they choose to believe it or not. That does not matter.
Exactly.
Because the fact remains the fact.
Exactly. Yeah. So
So
we kind of dove into our conversation into it as well too, and the more I had a conversation with him, the more I realized that there's just a lack of understanding how the scientific method works.
Yeah.
So there is a process, right? So like with science, you can make a claim like, I was gonna say, if it's bright outside, I can make a hypothesis and say it's bright outside because the sun's out. So I can go and walk outside and I can see the sun's out, and then my hypothesis is confirmed. So that hypothesis turns into a fact.
Yeah.
So then we can take other hypotheses that we have, and then we all can go test them out. And then other scientific communities once I confirm my thing is a fact, then everyone else other scientists in the community can also test it, and then they critique it.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, they critique it, and they also have to agree that it's also true for them. Because Einstein said it best, like, laws of nature have to be the same for everyone. It just cannot just be for me.
Yeah.
So if it's confirmed by other one, then it becomes a fact, like a hypothesis once, or if it doesn't, or even if it's wrong, it's also you learn something in that process that could lead you to a different direction.
I think in that line, something which not many people talk about generally, even in the scientific realm, is that a law, when they say that something is a law,
right,
and we take it as gospel truth, right? Newton's laws of motion and gravity and all those things, and at that point of time, that's what they were, laws. They were not hypotheses, they were laws. A law is valid only till the point of time it does not fail. That is a very important thing to understand. So let's say 1 billion experiments have been done, 1 billion trials have been done for Newton's laws of motion, and every time it has given you the same result as it's supposed to.
Right.
One day, one trial goes off. You investigate it.
Yeah.
And if you see that your experimental conditions were fine and still the law was failing, then you throw the law out. The humility to accept it is what we need to engender in ourselves. And that is supposed to be a beautiful thing for some people and a horrifying thing for a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Some people take a hit on their egos.
Yeah. They're like, how? Like, if Newton were alive during Einstein's time, seeing him throw his law of gravitation out, I'm sure Newton would have sent out tweets like, current,
like Donald Trump.
No, I think because he would have been also been pursuing the truth. So if he found that Einstein corrected his,
Yeah, but he was also limited, by the way.
By the technology, right? Yeah.
Also, he believed in God. He thought, I see a hand of God.
That's true.
So, it's only as far as you're going to take it.
Right.
Have you guys heard of the phrase Occam's razor?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that the simplest solution is supposed to be true or something like that. So I'm not quoting it right verbatim as it is, but people are insecure about not knowing things.
Right.
We like things to be organized. The fact that when we say in terms of a light can be a wave and a particle,
at the same
which
time.
is such a general notion, and this is like, come on, it's one thing.
Yeah, everything has to be black or white.
Yeah, the fact that we need to pin it down, and it speaks to ourselves, and we are psychologically that way. That's how what gave rise to a number of belief systems in general, where people can't explain. They want to go to sleep thinking that the gas stove is not on, and there's God looking over me.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing,
Right.
It's, like I'm not trying to belittle anyone who believes in it, but it comes from the fact of the fear of uncertainty that I can't live with it. Oh my God, am I existing in a parallel universe? There's someone who's affecting me.
But I find beauty in the not knowing. I can understand why a lot of people might fear it, and out of fear they might start believing in things that who the hell wants to burn for eternity for not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people in power want you to.
Yeah, because they're trying to
control you that way.
Yeah.
It's a much higher social motivation for people to think that they might burn in hell,
right,
to actually live their life right, than thinking that, oh, maybe I would become broke in 2 years,
right,
and ruin my life and other people. That's not a bigger motivation. That's that's motivation for older people when they look back at their lives of the times they have lost. And they're like, oh, I could have done that. I could have done this, but I was religious. Like, no, that may not be the only reason, but that's possible. I didn't taste bacon or something. Like, what happened?
There's a lot of limitations that obviously religion sets.
Yep.
And
then I'm sorry, I was gonna say it's good motivation,
yep,
but unfortunately, it can't be tested by the scientific method, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Something like that, and
it's data.
Yeah, and the whole idea of science is the scientific method, like you said.
And testing. If you can't test something, it's not science.
Then it's
either
philosophy.
Philosophy or just logic, thought experiments.
That's what science used to be. It used to be philosophy until we learned that we can experiment things and get evidence.
So good segue actually into how the first laws of science actually came into place when Aristotle and thinkers. Actually, it's a good point. Like scientists before, or what we might call scientists,
right?
Who we might call scientists were thinkers. They thought that we can think the entire universe. Yeah. Right. The word experiment was not in the lexicon at that point of time. Nobody thought a rock. Aristotle says, if you push a rock, it'll just keep moving till someone stops it. I mean, that's a beautiful thought.
Right.
It's poetic. It's almost like a shairi,
Yeah.
Sure.
So, but then someone said, oh, there's a relative state of rest and relative state of motion.
Right.
And that kind of completely boggled people's mind at the point when Newton came in, because I think we talk about space and time in general in our perceived version of reality. In the macro perspective, we look at space and time differently. But I think you guys might have heard about that space and time are actually one variable together. Yeah. It's a 4-dimensional thing.
Because one or the other cannot exist, right? They need...
Without the other.
Yeah. They are intertwined, if you will. Is that the right word?
No. Yeah, that's true. It's intertwined in certain way that we cannot differentiate it. But our perception of time is what puts time aside. I mean, think about it. We put the label time there.
Right.
Science did not come in with this like 10 commandments, like, oh, guys, this thing that you're feeling, that you didn't shave and the hair started growing out, time. That didn't happen. We thought that, oh, there's something which is happening here, and we labeled it as time, right?
Right.
But if you, as Einstein said, the nature or Earth, cosmos, whatever, has to behave in its own way. It shouldn't be a slave to anything. There's no concept for it to listen to someone as opposed to someone else's view. So theories are basically just wisps of air. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And so now when we put a label on it, we immediately start tagging it with perception. And then we always separated it. Right?
Yeah, in the beginning, you're saying, right? Yeah.
So there was no concept. There was always concept of absolute time. That time started at some point of time.
Right.
See,
it's
amazing.
Yeah.
Time started at some point of time.
Yeah, because does time always exist? Like
even in the early 20th century, I believe that scientists actually thought that the universe was infinite and ageless, right? Until we got like guys like Einstein with relativity.
Yes.
Then we got Hubble. And then we started to realize...
Hubble was the guy. Yeah.
And we saw that there might have been a beginning to the universe.
So Hubble, I think, saw that the planets were moving away.
Moving away from each other.
Yeah.
Accelerating at a constant rate. Oh, not a constant rate, but accelerating.
At an increasing rate. At a faster rate,
It just keeps increasing.
Yeah.
I think one of the analogies is like if you throw an apple up, it just keeps going up higher and higher and faster,
yeah,
right.
and it makes no sense. It defies the laws of gravity or understanding that we have.
Yeah, because I think the difference between, if I can explain in a very simple way, in nature, between Newton's law of gravitation and which was Einstein's theory of relativity, is that Newton localized the problem. He said that when we talk about gravity, this bottle and this glass, which our listeners cannot see right now, but are going to attract each other, and I can figure out an equation between the two. Right?
So then in that equation would be the law
of gravitation, which is G into M1, M2, whatever. Like the mass is important. The mass, the distance between them is an important thing, and he had a gravitational constant. And it was a simple law, and people loved it because it's valid, actually. I mean, to a certain extent of precision. But what Einstein said is that everything has its own perception. So if this is in the space, it has an effect on every one of us.
Just like that.
Good point.
Yeah, it has an effect on every one of us. And if you remove this, then the effect goes away. But you cannot localize, say that, this effect on this particular, this bottle does not have a particular effect on this glass. It does not like this glass. It's not like favoring that I should put some amount of, effect on this glass.
In terms of effect, you mean like the gravitational pull that it has?
Gravitational pull.
Like an attraction or sort of?
Yeah, or attraction sort of, yeah.
It just, when you're sitting there, gravity is either, what is it, pushing or pulling?
It's always a pulling, this thing. It's an attraction thing.
So like there's a small amount of gravity that I have that I have a very small effect, and then when you get to Earth, like
we are talking about so with the way you are saying it, it's about the Newton's laws of law of gravitation, which still stands. I mean, people in physics, I think everyone who grows up in high school actually learns about that. It's the same thing, but it's wrong in the scale where actually you would start calculating it, because it has its own problems.
Right.
But in general, you would say that I have some mass.
Right.
And by virtue of the fact that I have mass, I can attract other kind of mass. That's it. That's what Newton's theory was kind of all about.
And then when you get those large bodies in the galaxy, that's when you start seeing like a bend in space-time, right? And
that was
curvature and all that.
Yes, that was so space-time. The concept of space-time did not exist back then. So Einstein borrowed the concept of space-time, or distortion of space-time, as he calls it, from Lorentz, who's a mathematician who did like a matrix transformation. He never got credit for it.
Right.
A lot of people know this, but his theory of relativity actually came from there. So
wow.
Yeah, but the fact that Einstein was able to see a matrix, when you have a matrix transformation, they call it. I mean, it's mathematics here. I don't want to sound.
No.
It just goes
beyond. So that mathematician, so he kind of had the idea of relativity, but Einstein kind of like put it into the real world and the universe, or
I mean, so when you say mathematics, we say variables, right?
Yeah.
To variables, you can attach any attributes. So when you actually have a set of numbers or a set of conditions like variables, you say X, Y, Z, and that's like a three-dimensional matrix. Like, X has some values, Y has some values, Z has some values. And then if you change it in a certain way, this is going to be the result. That was a mathematician's point of view. Einstein is like, if I put space in there, and time in there, oh my God,
So you gave it context in a way.
Yes. So I mean, credit where it's due, but
But that's, I mean, we talked about it a lot in our previous podcast. It's always, the shoulders of giants. Someone, devotes their life to figuring out something, and then here comes a guy like Einstein.
Yeah,
catches something that they didn't put together. So it's like from the beginning of time till now, everyone has played a role or a factor in helping someone understand.
It took him a long time. Yeah,
because only one person like you guys in your field. You're in manufacturing or engineering aspect. Whatever the issues or problems that you have how much time do you guys have to devote in that specific issue, or it could take a lifetime to solve a problem. And that solution could save someone else 100 years and outcomes, new theory or whatever.
I mean that's how the scientific community works, right? Every single paper matters.
Yeah.
However tiny the amount of information in it, someone's going to use it to build something more important, right?
Right. And then kind of tying back this to like the theory that I was talking about earlier, like, so you guys might be doing your own part, and when your hypothesis that you guys are working on, if you confirm it and it turns true, so it just goes into a bank of facts, and then someone now can look at these bank of confirmed hypotheses and say, you know what, if I take laws of Einstein's general theory of relativity, if I take X, Y, and laws of this, and if I look at what Hubble understood about the expanding universe, I can take these facts and turn it into a theory, and here, boom, pops out Big Bang. Yeah. Now we can understand.
That's what Stephen Hawking did. So yeah.
Right. So when people when we talk about the Big Bang, there are a lot of skeptics out there that don't understand what theories are. It's just not some guy sitting in a room saying, "Oh, this is what happened." It's through hundreds, if not thousands, or like during the beginning of civilization of our time, everyone that has contributed into simple facts, and then they're piled up into a bank.
Yeah.
And someone goes there and takes these facts and says, I can take these and I can make a prediction. And that prediction is what a theory is called.
Yeah, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle coming together piece by piece.
Right.
And you talked about relativity, we talked about Hubble. And then I think in 1960-something, by accident, they learned about the cosmic background radiation.
Yeah, that was...
all the pieces came together, and then the Big Bang was a real theory.
Yeah, that kind of got confirmed. The cosmic microwave background is... basically this surviving radiation, if I can use that term. It's not really scientific, but a surviving radiation of what happened in the Big Bang. It's like a snapshot in time. You're getting that picture right now because light also takes time to travel to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's the pre-existing. So now it's basically this. So suppose I take a glass tumbler, drop it.
Right.
Okay. It shatters into pieces, right? So at the point it shatters, every particle starts moving in its own way, right? By virtue of whatever force it got. But then it's moving with gravity and everything. Now you turn wherever it's heading to, you turn it back. You just turn it back, everything into the opposite direction. What would happen? You would get the same glass back. And nobody who would say that, okay, no, that's not possible. No, that is basically the reality.
And is that the Big Bang?
That's what the Big Bang is. Yeah. That when you actually look back, if you in the equation which they suggested, if you take time as negative, like just go back in time instead when you solve the equation, then that is where I think Stephen Hawking came in. And I'm really jumping huge leaps of struggle which he has gone through. Yeah, but he came to the theory that the universe began at a black hole. Because that is where actually the theory collapses. Not the Big Bang theory, the theory of relativity collapses.
Right, it doesn't work in the Big Bang. I mean, the black hole, right?
Yeah. And I think an interesting thing, as you said, that when we actually have the facts together, like someone has made these laws and people are hypothesizing on that basis, standing on the shoulder of giants. That's what Newton said, right?
Yeah.
Like our understanding of things kind of drives our hypothesis to like assign tags which are still understandable. That's the limit of human thought. Suppose you would talk about space-time. Now, space-time is a new sexy term. It's like, okay, so if space-time behaves this way, then mathematically, I can show that these things should happen.
Right.
And that's a theory in general right now that can have a law rooted in reality, but that's a theory right now. What do I call this this term which I got from my equation? And what would you do? You would again go back to that bank of words which you have found out and try to put in one of those tags which seems suitable.
Right.
Now you see, instead of expanding our consciousness, we again reverted back to our basket of terms, things which we had. And that is where the problem lies. That's why a lot of people would say that I feel it's right.
Yeah.
I mean, you understand what I'm saying. This term means this. This kind of has this slight bit of inductive influence, because you feel it's right.
Yeah.
It's like an echo chamber. You're like, yeah, I think it's
we like to label everything, don't we?
Yeah.
I think it just makes it easier for us to understand,
to comprehend, and to communicate, so that other people would actually agree with me. Because
Absolutely.
I want you to agree with me, please. That's always there, and that is how he thinks it's palatable also.
Right.
You can't tell someone, give them, like at a point of time when people did not understand electricity, a shock was probably a magician doing something, right? So there was no label for it back then. It was like hand of God, and it's like things.
You're limited to your knowledge at that time, I guess, right?
Yeah.
No, it's cool. You know how, as you were explaining, like laws, like gravity is like a fun thing to kind of look at, you know, because like gravity is both a law and a theory. Because the equation that you were talking about, like Newton's laws of gravity,
it's wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, to a certain point, like, I mean, we can measure, like, if I drop an object, I can calculate, you know, the speed or when it's going to land on the ground, or when it's, you know, so if those things are law. The only part is we can understand it, so we'll say it's a law, but we don't know why it's happening, and that's the theory.
Yes. So I think Einstein explained that in his theory. That's why it was so beautiful. Like, so what Einstein said, I'll just throw it out. I mean, it may not make sense right now. Even I don't understand it that well, but I get the qualitative version, right? So space-time is like, I think you might have, if you see any video, it's like that. Space-time is like a fabric which is stretched out.
Right. Just like if we were all holding like a bed sheet, if we all are holding a corner, that's space-time. If you look at it one-dimensional.
And it has no mass right now.
Right.
It has no mass right now. Okay. And then I drop
a marble
or bowling ball, right? Yeah. And it stretches. So now, because the contour of the bed sheet changes, now anything which would go, you would put in the bed sheet would start gravitating towards that marble.
Almost falling through, right?
Right? That's the simplest explanation. Simplest. But it's so much more complex because this is a 2D sheet, two-dimensional sheet, and it's four-dimensional space-time. You can't even visualize it. The humans are not, like we don't have that kind of evolutionary advantage to actually even perceive that way. That's why we make supercomputers. Mm-hmm. And so now if you put two there, then something else would happen. Like if you throw a ball or something, if two marbles are there, then it'll actually perform a different kind of motion.
Right.
What I was, just to bring back to my original point, you see that it's not localized anymore between two objects. The fact that there are two objects prior to the introduction of any other mass in there, the contour of the bedsheet would start affecting them. So it's the contour which interacts with the other body, the new body. I can repeat it. Yes.
It's not the original body itself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So suppose this, Newton said this thing attracts this one.
Yeah.
But then there's an interlinking step here. This thing distorts space-time, and the distortion of the space-time interacts with
that one.
Yes. Yeah. So that was, I think that in very simple words.
So would that be the gravitational waves then?
That's the gravitational wave. When we say gravitational wave, then there's a motion concept involved. So for example, instead of putting a marble like this, you start putting like a heavy thing there which bounces off or something.
Okay.
So then you'll have vibrations on the bed sheet. That's a gravitational wave. Yeah. Okay. So what it would do is, like, if there's an object here very far away on the edge, it would just prop up a little bit.
Wow.
So it'll get affected with a time delay, which is so beautiful because the gravitational waves would still travel at the speed of light.
And the most incredible thing is that gravitational waves were hypothesized or theorized by Einstein, right?
Einstein,
yeah.
And we just recently discovered them.
So they're confirmed.
And I think it was the merger of two black holes.
Yeah.
Billions of years ago.
It's basically a collapse of like a neutron star, I think.
Yeah.
A neutron or pulsar, they call it. I'm not very sure about this. So, but there's a great, say, a cataclysmic event in space. And what they did was they had two lasers pointed perpendicularly. And the laser goes and comes back, right? And it's a timer.
Right.
Basically, it's almost like just a clock. But when space is stretched out, a light wave would take some time to cover that. And since they were perpendicular and it would stretch out differently, and they were just noticing the time difference. That's such a simple experiment to speak of on paper. Objective to detect the time difference between two laser pulses.
Right.
Going to a mirror and coming back. They're just coming back and they're like always registering together with whatever finite phase difference they have. And then they notice the change.
And it was a really sensitive change, right? Like I read 1/1000th of a proton.
Yeah, so it took technology to catch up for us to detect that, which is
takes such a long time. Yeah,
I mean, if you have like a train going by, you have a small tremor on Earth, anything can throw it off. But now we have the tech that it can kind of take that away, separate it, and look at that. Yeah,
you have actually air bearings, things like air bearings and all.
Right.
Like how to isolate a measurement. Okay. What are the contributing factors?
Cosmic background radiation. They have to even get rid of that.
Yeah. So everything. Incredible. How do you shield it? You have a lead seal, and because the thing is the generation of light energy. Once the light is generated from whatever process, thermal, just interaction like your mercury lamps and all these things where you actually have electrons shooting out. So those things, once that's happened, the light is in the environment. But the things which are generating the light are connected to the ground. Like, they are connected to an actual power source. Mm-hmm. And there are so many things which you have to do in order to make sure that this thing happened just because of the gravitational wave and not because of anything else. And that took such a long time. I think that how they have to be very sure about this.
Right.
How can you point to the difference? Yeah.
I think when they discovered it, they were like amazed that, oh my God, all our work has come to fruition. But they spent like 6 to 8 months just confirming that the data was accurate.
Correct.
Yeah, because
it's incredible.
Well, so what's crazy is like the word physics means nature, right? So when you're doing, or when you study physics, or you're doing any, experimental or theoretical physics, what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand nature. That's all it is. All you're doing is going outside and seeing what makes up my reality.
Yeah.
Like when people, and that's what I hope like people can kind of wake up and try to understand. Like when you wake up in bed, there's all these laws of nature in place that allow your body to be exactly where it is, to function. Like when you wake up and you walk to your bathroom, the space between you and your bathroom, there's something needs to create that. There's some laws, and there's gravity. God knows what other forces are there, but there's forces fighting one another, and whoever won the battle allowed your reality to be.
That's the beauty.
It allows you to walk in. It allows you to look up and you try to understand it.
Yeah.
So when people are, say it's a theory and they just brush it off, like especially religious people, and don't make much of it, what they don't understand is, of course, we will never know the answer, right? But it's our job as humans to understand at least how our reality works, and we're just opening doors and confirming facts, and then
we could all be wrong right now.
Yeah.
I think that the fact about when people say that they're atheist or something, it's not about saying that there is no God.
Right.
We say that God is one of those trillion, billion possibilities to all the answers you have. When you are faced with a problem in any situation, and if you could always have a trivial solution of switching the TV off.
Right.
And that's one, like you're looking at all these news. Okay, this is happening, that is happening. How do we solve this? If you try to think about it, it takes a little bit of effort from yourself. What's the best part is to switch it off, order some pizza. So it's a much more easier.
Some pizza.
It's a much more easier and so much more comforting. Yeah. It has its own. I'm not against religion. Everyone is entitled to whatever they want to. The point is that somehow they are insecure about science. Then that is where the problem comes. Like,
it kills curiosity.
How does my development about an explanation of something which is commonplace,
right,
and provided with a much more richer data, a much more richer experience, much more richer background study, compel you to think about your life in a bad way, and somehow offends you. That's the sad part. Like when we talk about creationism, for example, for some reason they still 6,000, that magic number. I don't know why 6,000.
6,000 years. The reason for that is because most of these scientific explanations directly contradict religious beliefs. Right. Creationism is directly contradicted by evolution and other theories of origin of life. So they are forced to be offended. Right.
I was reading, Richard Dawkins was saying, if there is a so-called a creationist, then why did 99.9% of every life go extinct through evolution of time? Because you can see there were so many species that just got wiped out. If it was created so specially, why did these things fail in nature? Mm-hmm. And that's a proof of evolution, natural selection awards people that can figure out who wants to survive in it. If it was created, then why did these things go extinct?
Yeah, so this natural selection, I think I was just maybe it's a good point to talk about evolution also. I think a lot of people misunderstand evolution. and possibly it may be also that people understand evolution, and I was wrong for a long time. I used to think that, these creatures are adapting to it.
Right.
Yeah. So now that whole adapting concept of adapting does not happen because this deer is like, this motivational Sylvester Stallone deer, which really is like, my God, I'm going to stay through this winter. Like, just test me right now. And suddenly he's like super massive, and he has this amazing gene pool like Genghis Khan, and he's like impregnating all other deers. And then you have a new breed of deers. Doesn't work that way. Yeah. But that is how we would like to think it is. Yeah. It's amazing.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Because there's so much time involved in it too, that because we have to kind of picture it that way.
Yeah. It's completely random, actually.
Yeah, I think the best way to explain it is that populations evolve and not species. Populations of
it's a good point. Yeah,
creatures evolve over time.
Yeah.
So I can't stay for 100 years in the winter and grow like fur like a wolf. It's never gonna happen. Yeah, it's just that.
Yeah.
My species that continues to live in the winter, the ones that do have more fur will live on.
Yeah. So, and the ones that don't die off.
Yeah. It's funny that even correlates with our understanding of climate and weather. Yeah. We seem to think, if the climate's changing, then why isn't it getting warmer right now? But you have to look at it over a period of long time to see that, yes, climate change is real. Similar to the whole thing you're saying about evolution.
Yeah, evolution, the way... so every time a child is born of any kind of, like reproduction the process is happening, you are actually getting two strains of DNA, and they are unlinking.
Right.
And they're relinking again. Now, there is just like a manufacturing process where however sure you are that it's going to link for sure, you can say 99.9999% I'm sure, we might have one defect in a million parts.
Right.
That's evolution taking place.
Yeah.
So, small characteristic. And because we have so much of time and so much reproduction between animals and plants is taking place in this natural way, you have that many number of experiments. You get what I'm saying?
To happen, yeah.
Yeah, so now something's happening here. Like these small linking of these chains, they're small. This small speck of mistake.
Is that what you would call a mutation, by the way?
Oh my God, that's
a mutation. Sort of, yeah.
So we can kind of say like, our ancestors, apes, they reproduced or made it a million times. Out of that million times, one mutation led to us.
Yeah, one mutation, led to a version which is like 98.9% ape-like and 1% like us.
Yeah.
But then so many years passed.
And then, they reproduce. And they reproduce again.
Yeah, and they reproduce 1 million, 2-3 million times, and they also had a defect. And then... And the one that has some of those defects could either hurt them in their survival in nature.
Exactly, that's a good point.
Or some will give them advantage.
Yes.
So like in the I don't know if you guys
multiple number of defects. Some were good defects, some were bad defects.
Yeah, it's just a gene of luck pool. You win the lottery.
So that was the survival of the fittest, which was Darwin's theory that that gene pool which is the strongest in the current environmental circumstances, they would grow. That's why you actually have the race, different kind of races, because it came because of the climate and acclimatization, right? Because those people migrated there, they started developing for such a long time that you almost have this distinctive visual picture of how people would look in various parts of the world.
In terms of what we're talking about, one thing that always confuses me is brain size. The human brain size, we evolved, we became so much smarter.
Yep.
Why is it that no other animal got that?
We talked about it last one.
Yeah, there's a lot of theories for that. The one that I really like is that there was, so obviously survival of the fittest is still a thing, right?
Yeah.
And no other animal had the characteristic trait of intelligence. We're not bigger than a lion or a tiger, anything else, but we were smarter.
Yeah.
And then when that trait worked, even if it was a mutation at first, it expanded over time.
Consciousness in some kind, I'm just laying out there for the WestWorld.
Yeah.
That's kind of how dogs came to be, right? Because it was kind of like more of a wolf-like animal and scary, but then they began depending on human beings for food, and the cuter the dog, the more likely they were to be kept.
Yeah.
So then now you got these adorable things running around.
Domesticated wolves.
Yeah, the more docile the dogs or the more docile the wolves, the longer they're
the more the promise of actually getting food at the evening when my master is going to give me food or throw me a bone from the deer they just hunted out.
Right.
That's how I think wolves. If you've watched this show, it's an amazing show. I think Cosmos.
That's what I was trying to do.
So lovely.
Which one?
I was trying to say,
one or the Carl Sagan one?
I mean, the Carl Sagan one was again, it was epic in its own way.
That's
but even now, new one was also pretty good because there's some developments obviously happened in the course of time.
Yeah.
And they explain the evolution of wolves to dogs.
Yeah,
really
they
good.
show it.
The first episode,
it's
where 10 minutes. Just watch that. It explains it. Awesome individuals. When I first saw that, I was like, holy shit, that's how it happened.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson shows his acting chops. So there's someone there.
And I don't think that dogs are the only animals that evolved that way. If you think about it, what do you call them? Poultry, and what do you call them? The livestock.
Livestock.
Oh, right.
Those animals have also evolved.
Yeah, we breeded them to our own.
Livestock. Yeah,
need, cows, if you will.
Cows. I'm sure that cows in the past.
Yeah, they probably
violent.
The bisons. Bisons.
They're violent.
Yeah.
But some of them are not.
What do you call that? That's called what? Selective selection, as opposed to natural selection, right?
Artificial.
term for it?
Artificial.
That's artificial selection, sort of. Yeah. So the man-made evolution. Oh, sorry.
You got talk close to the mic.
Yeah, man-made evolution is smaller in scale, although in comparison to this thing, the standard. Yeah. The bigger question, I think, which we probably don't have an answer for, and which is quite topical in terms of WestWorld.
Yeah.
Is
spoilers ahead, guys.
Everything comes back to WestWorld.
If you don't want to be spoiled on WestWorld,
turn this podcast off.
Turn it off for now.
I'll tell you when to turn it back on.
Actually, yeah.
Just FYI, this is prior to the season finale.
Go ahead.
So, is that
no one's ever
what
come
do we?
back.
When do we? If you go all the way back, I mean, we are talking about evolution once life on Earth was present, or what we think life is. A general belief is that life on Earth is DNA based. The fact that the DNA can self-replicate,
right,
and create a host of
a copy of itself.
Yeah,
right,
a copy of itself. Yeah, and then it has the information to create proteins, which would be the workhorses for your body. And that's how life is sustained, for example. In any, say, it's a cell or like a multicellular organism.
Is it a protein becomes cells? Is that how it works?
No, the proteins actually work to sustain it. They're the workhorses, basically.
Separate from cells.
Cells,
cells contain proteins.
Yeah, cells contain
made up of proteins. Right?
So cells,
and the DNA informs the protein what protein needs to be formed and what function it needs to carry out.
Right.
That's what the genetic material in the nucleus of the cell tells you to do, whether it's RNA or DNA. That's what that
so
does.
Now we were talking about a point of time where in evolution you would have different kind of coding. So now the information, the DNA would suggest, hey, protein X, you are a little more cranky than your former father, maybe, so you behave differently. I'm really simplifying this to
through dumb luck.
But no, I mean, I don't even know it, but I can understand it. That's in some form of reference. That's true. But when did that start happening? And that is what WestWorld is. When do you actually have consciousness? What do you? I mean, it's a parallel question.
Right.
Like why did it happen? How origin of life,
Like the fact that DNA, like you said, it replicates itself. And can you say, is that consciously aware of knowing that it needs to do that? Does it know? Is it all of a sudden one day standing there like, oh, you know what, I should be...
I don't think that it has to know, right? I don't think it has to be aware. It's just that, like, I think if you think about what is life, right, from in the most basic chemical and biochemical standpoint, it's just that it replicates. It's a chemical. It's a molecule.
But what tells it to replicate? Just like
that's really interesting. So I think
it can be random also.
Yeah. So the definition of life chemically, I think, is replication, self-replication, and then metabolism. So
what's the second one?
Metabolism. What's that? Continuously repeating processes as part of an overall system
to sustain.
And I think that's the answer to your question, right? What tells a molecule or a cell to replicate? It's just that it's a part of an overall system that needs it to exist. Like, for example, if I need my gallbladder cells to exist,
right,
and they're dying out, my system, my body is going to tell my body, or my body is going to tell me that I need more gallbladder cells, and those gallbladder cells are going to replicate. But then that explanation, I think, gets thrown out of the window when you have unicellular organisms, which aren't a part of a system.
So these are cells by themselves?
Yeah, like amoeba or bacteria.
It's just a single cell functioning in itself, and it finds some kind of source of energy, converts it to its own benefit so that it can still continue the process.
So that's still not
think
conscious?
about that's life. It is.
Yeah, I don't think it's consciousness. It's just that you're part of a system that requires you.
How does it know that it needs to go there and take that host?
Yeah, because it's quite simple, right? If you're missing, or let's say a tree is missing a cell or some tissue that causes it to photosynthesize in excessive amounts.
Right.
It's going to know because it's not getting enough. What's the byproduct of whatever that byproduct is.
Right.
It's going to know that it's not getting enough.
Yeah.
It's going to send out an order.
Yeah. Through chemical pathways, it's going to send out an order saying, you know what, I need more.
So
oxygen and
we
energy.
always talk in the past. We always talked about how there's just a spectrum of consciousness. So those things that are falling order are probably in the very low end of consciousness, and then our level is probably, we think it's at 100%, but we could also be in a spectrum of very 10, 20, 30%. Who knows? Maybe there's some even a higher level of consciousness that we can never probably achieve,
I think
that's the future.
Yeah, I think we're very unique in our consciousness, in that I think alone on Earth, we're the one species that wants to replicate ourselves for the continuity of our species. I don't think any other species does that. I think mammals reproduce because
they don't consciously do it.
They don't consciously do it.
I think they're just doing it for the pleasure.
They reproduce. Well, I don't know about pleasure. I think there are only like 5 species or so that do it for pleasure, but
mostly primates.
Really?
Yeah.
The others do it just because they have that instinct. They get into that heat period and they decide it's time to make babies.
It's like they don't have free will.
Yeah,
there's some program code that's just making them just do it.
Yeah, it's. I don't think that they think that, like my lineage is dying out. What's my grandfather in heaven going to think? Produce some babies. I don't think they think that. We're unique. We're unique in our consciousness of that.
And I kind of saw that today when we were talking about how does that cell know something, right? So he said it was part of a system, which makes complete sense.
Right.
Today my ink cartridge ran out. So it's not conscious, but it can send a signal to my computer and be like, hey, your ink is low.
So is your printer conscious?
It's like I guess something is conscious there that's connecting it all, and it's but the theory of consciousness that I really like is the information theory, which I kind of think WestWorld even taps into, because Arnold, who initially created the system, he was looking for consciousness.
Yeah.
And apparently it's kind of there almost, but he hasn't found it. And the information theory says that you just build layers and layers of information, and then eventually the lights just turn on.
Yeah. It was, I think, there are a lot of, that's, I think, referring to the maze of how the hosts are supposed to go through an array of emotions in order to finally come out of the bracket of hosts. For example, like what can be called hosts, right?
So once they complete the maze, they're no longer a host?
Yeah, they're conscious.
But actually, like, to that point, I don't think I've gone through that. Like, me personally, I don't think I've gone through that gamut of emotions. But I'm still conscious.
You're still not conscious.
Like,
you did complete the maze and you feel like
but your ancestors did.
They did.
That's right. This is why I brought this up, because this is a subject which is uncomfortable for progressive, scientific minded people and curious people. That this is a very good argument which a lot of people who profess religion bring. Like, how can you create life? A lot of people ask this question. When a mother gives birth to a child, can you recreate that process?
I think you
Ask
can.
the scientists.
Fuck yeah.
I think you can.
Here's a test tube.
I think that's going to happen eventually.
But like that's
we're doing it already.
They are not actually voicing it the right way, but their concern still exists. That can we create life synthetically? You get what I'm saying? We can clone. When we clone, we are taking again the strain of DNA. Where did that thing happen? Like, and when we talk about life, we are talking about a life when Earth was basically just minerals and just like molten mass, where you just had bombardments and some kind of organic development happened as what we call life. Like
this is like the earlier stages where it was chemistry in the beginning, right? How those chemical exchanges led to biology.
Yeah.
And then you had like the prokaryote and eukaryote cells.
Yeah, it's basically how chemical reactions led to self-replication and metabolism. That's where life started.
Right.
Yeah, and it's so that there are a lot of theories about it. Actually, I think...
I have a favorite theory, but I'll let you explain.
Yeah, you were reading about it. I wanted to talk about that because...
Let him
go
talk.
For it.
No,
yeah,
ahead.
you should
No, go for it. Okay, anyway.
No, you go for it.
Favorite theory.
Yeah, my favorite, but I don't think this is real. Is it's called panspermia. Have you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. So there are two versions of panspermia. One's that I think it's called So there's this book, by the way, that I read a couple of years ago, which was written by a creationist scientist that was trying to defend the biblical model, and he makes a good argument, because they say like day 1, this shit happened, day 3 that happened, and sequentially, if you look at it, it kind of the sequence makes sense. It matches evolution. But anyway, so that book goes at panspermia and it summarizes all these things that and it says there are two versions of panspermia. The first one is that asteroids kept bombarding the heck out of Earth, when it was just formed. Asteroids the size of planets, bombarding it. And out of that, certain molecules were planted on the Earth, which resembled pre-biological molecules.
Planted by God in a biblical aspect, or
no? This is the scientific.
Okay.
This is one of the theories, and I don't know if it's been proven yet. Maybe it has.
Okay.
I think I know why. But so that bombardment happened, and then pre-biological molecules were deposited on Earth. By pre-biological, I mean things like precursors to proteins.
Mm-hmm.
They were deposited on Earth, and then Earth was itself so volatile and volcanic, and all kinds of energy and crap was happening. They just ended up fusing, and then
right.
One thing led to another. Pressure, energy, temperature, all that led to biological material being formed. Right. But my favorite one, which is the second one, is that aliens sent some sort of
aliens.
Yeah.
Aliens. What's that called? Scientology.
Scientology.
Tom Cruise.
Hey, and going with that theory, isn't the most popular one that I've heard about panspermia is that it actually
from Mars.
Life started from Mars.
Yeah.
Because Mars was more acceptable to life way earlier than Earth, right? Maybe like billions of years.
It's quite you can't explain it because I think on Mars they found rivers of methane, didn't they? Was that Mars?
Yeah.
Or some
rivers of methane? Yes.
That's
and the theory is that methane is one of the precursor molecules to these pre-biological molecules.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's quite feasible.
It's a very difficult thing to prove right now, because all of these theories, and once we do that, I think that would be, in my light of understanding, a death knell for all religious claims for lives.
Actually, so that book that I got to go find that paper and those news articles and all that. But they said that this asteroid landed in Australia in the 70s that had, dig this, amino acids. There are precursors to
proteins.
Amino acids, precursors to proteins in RNA and DNA and all that.
Wait, this happened in the 1970s?
1970s.
An asteroid landed that had amino acids. It's called, I don't know, some asteroid landed in Australia.
I don't know much about amino acids, but how do we differentiate that it didn't happen once it went through the Earth's atmosphere?
That's a good point. I don't
and get contaminated.
That's a good point.
That's a good point. Yeah.
There's one of the theories that I like is like instead of aliens spreading seeds, they talk about like the first life forms on Earth were mushrooms. So like, why is that? So like they say like when a mushroom like cap opens, it drops like millions of spores that go flying everywhere, and then throughout the world you can see different mushrooms. Just if you go in one of the Atlantic Ocean, whatever, if you were to like take a bag and capture some of the air, there's likely odds you'll catch mushroom spores that are traveling between the world from Ireland to America, and they'll land. It's very hard to kill them. They even tested them to take them out of space and bring them back, and you can still grow them.
Yeah.
So the earliest life forms in the world
were mushrooms.
So some of the theories are that there's just a bunch of mushroom spores just flying all over the cosmic.
Yeah, but if you think about it, like,
wow, that's possible.
I mean, it is quite possible. There's so much radiation in space, isn't there? You go close to any star, there's so much radiation that just is designed
poisonous.
Well,
but there are some creatures, though. I think they're called. I forgot now what I think in Cosmos, in the series, they showed these creatures which can actually... small hippopotamus things. Right? And they show those creatures which have survived the harshest of conditions shown like on Earth.
Yeah.
And they still haven't had the need to evolve. They're just like an anomaly.
Because they survived everything.
Yeah, they just survived everything, and they like we are talking a language in which we feel that these have a lot of willpower, like which is not the reality.
They just happen.
That's how we talk, and it's nice to talk that way. It's just like at point of times when there's a point of contention, then you start going back to like, this happened, so I just meant this way,
Right.
Bringing up the radiation talk, it just makes a lot of sense to me that. With the what is it called? Panspermia?
Panspermia.
Panspermia.
Spermia? Like
spermia. Sperm.
Yeah,
okay.
like sperm.
Okay. So that theory, since the Earth was so volatile in the early times, if whatever life that was on an asteroid, if it can survive the radiation, it can sure as hell survive on Earth.
Yes.
So maybe it wasn't life, right? That was on the asteroid. It was a precursor. It was just basically a chemical.
Right.
Also,
what is precursor? Just so like listeners don't know what it is. Like, what does that mean?
It's just a predecessor.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Just a predecessor.
I don't know.
A predecessor that has the material to become life.
I'll give a good example. Precursor is like milk to yogurt.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to have milk for yogurt, or you need to have some amount of yogurt to convert milk to yogurt.
Yeah.
That's the sense of life.
Actually,
is cow a precursor?
Cow is a precursor to milk.
Yeah. Like if you know the process of how yogurt is made, you need to either introduce the bacteria, or you need to have some kind of yogurt which has already been made. You take a little bit of that yogurt and you introduce it to the milk.
Right.
And then you get yogurt again.
Isn't it weird, like we're the only species
So possibly we are eating yogurt which was made millions of years ago. It's possible.
Ew.
But isn't it funny, like we're
expired.
We're like the only species that drinks milk of another animal, and we produce it and manufacture it at such a high level. Like, what other animals on Earth is doing that? Where you have 1 billion cows captive just to fucking...
I always imagine who was the first person that stole milk from like a cow. I was like, all right, I'm gonna start drinking your milk now.
Yeah, maybe. Or you know what could be like a caveman that's like a nomad, and he's been hungry all day, and like he knows that cow's in milk, so he just grabs and starts going at it.
Running around giving cows titty twisters.
not nice.
Good Lord.
That was a mutation, I think.
I used to think that, how a cow has like 4 udders. I should probably not even say this, but whatever. When I was a kid, I used to think that one of the udders is for chocolate milk, one of them is for milk and strawberry. Like an ice cream machine.
It sounds like heaven, dude.
Yeah.
Sounds like heaven.
You had an active imagination.
Man.
As a youngster.
I've always been woke.
We were talking about evolution earlier, and I think it's kind of like we're born in an era where we had, Charles Darwin's book already written, so we were kind of taught these things in school, so those things seem normal. But if you just go back prior to his time, before his era, what would you honestly think? And I've been trying to like convince myself to like imagine I live in that day where I don't have this knowledge, like what would I think?
Jesus.
Yeah, and you go back to creationists, like how the hell can I explain like that you and I, like how these things had to be created? That's the only way of looking things back then without that information. Yeah,
we're too proud actually to think that we could have just resulted out of an experiment.
Right.
I mean, that's really true. Yeah, it's human arrogance, right? We just can't understand how the only species on Earth that's capable of consciousness
we can't
a consequence of randomness.
You bring up a good point. Like, even go before Jesus.
Right.
Imagine yourself having no knowledge, and you see the sun up there.
Yeah.
You see the moon up there. And you see that the sun is growing vegetation and it's giving life to everything. I'm going to think the sun is a god.
Right.
And the moon is a goddess or something like that, because you always look
That's
up.
Hinduism. That's really like a lot of other...
Egyptian.
Yeah, because Allah means...
Egyptian
like
religion also,
moon.
like Ra, the sun god and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That eye of... all these weird...
You're talking about like ancient Egypt?
Ancient Egypt.
And stuff?
Yeah, the sun god was there, right?
That was one of the first gods, and then they had the Nile River, which was giving life to everything. That was Ra or something. That
Ra
was
was the sun god, I think, right?
So this might have been something else.
Yeah.
The river god or water god or something like that.
And which is understandable. Now the word god came in much later, right? It's just... when it's magic... It's fascinating, right? People like, okay, this is happening, and you trust a belief till someday someone understands, oh, we can generate fire. We can get the same kind of heat.
We're gods too.
And so when
the person that has that power, like the first guy who figured out fire, imagine how many times he got laid.
Yeah.
Sent his DNA into the cosmos.
Holy shit, I want to be with that dude.
Fireman. I want to be with the fireman.
Like earlier, I think when fires used to be spontaneous, and like when you used to have burn forests down, they would always be worrying about trying to save themselves from it. Once they could tame fire, for example, then you know that, oh, okay, no God anymore. Because I think even in the Hindu texts, fire is supposed to be like a symbol of purity. I think it's supposed to purify things. That's why we burn our.
That's why you
dead,
throw
right?
all of our shit into the fire. Right?
Yeah,
right.
we burn our
really?
dead. We burn our dead and all, right? Because instead of cremation, cremation is actually burning, right? Or is digging?
Burial.
I don't know. Burying, right?
Yeah.
Burial. But we burn them. Because they're supposed to purify, release all the elements. There's some kind of beautiful things there. It's like, okay, so you came from this ground, and now we are going to release all your elements, like fire, water, earth, whatever, all those things that are going to go away. And it's a kind of symbol of purification, which is a nice thought. Fine.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter, really. Like, it's no context, there's no day it's going to help anybody.
It helps with the Walking
It's like,
Dead situation.
Okay, shit, I stepped on dog poop. I need to burn my feet right now to purify myself.
That would be extreme,
That's something that we don't, we always forget, right? So if you have like two sides arguing or not arguing, or let's say debating on, creationists or evolution or the Big Bang, whatever, regardless of what we think, the absolute truth lies out there.
Yeah,
it doesn't give a shit of what we think. It's just gonna do its own thing, So it's our duty to make sure we know the right truth.
Yeah.
And how can you have a conversation to get to that truth? And step one is to be rational.
Yeah, accept it. Actually, even accepting things is so difficult at times. Like
there's an amazing humility in accepting it.
Yeah. That's the beauty of the.
Do you guys see that in the scientific community as well? Because like I was watching that movie that came out, The Man Who Knew Infinity.
No,
so it's like it's about that. Did you see it?
Yeah, mathematician.
Yeah. So this kid from India that
Ramanujan.
Yeah, Ramanujan.
Yeah.
Where he figured out infinity, but it will take infinity to figure out his math to prove it. But it seems logical at that time. but like that movie kind of shows you too, even that people that are in this field, but they're not awoke, because like you have someone that's coming, and he has a set of information that it seems right in the beginning of the movie the way it should, but when he goes to was it Cambridge or what's that university?
I think it was Cambridge.
Or Oxford or one of those.
One of those. Man.
But like since he's Indian, since he's poor, they're overlooking that over than the material that he's bringing. Even within that community itself, there's some animal instincts that there's so much pride and ego that always kind of overtakes the information.
That's how history has worked also.
Right.
I think you see these periods of dark ages and coming, and somehow it's interesting to talk about this in considering the topical elements right now, is because somehow we seem to have like a short attention span, even though we have had so much of evolution, civilization, time has passed. Right. We might keep repeating the same mistakes. Someone might. And if someone is in power and he can actually make it like a blanket reality for everyone else, then we're going to relive pockets of those same experience.
Sure.
And about like how people are getting animalistic, yes. I mean, that they're going... like we can be self-destructive. I think that's what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean we're not looking at the information as we present it. We're judging one person based on the notion of where he's coming from.
Yeah.
So do you guys, like, as you were doing your studies, or do you kind of get that competitive nature too? Like, I feel like that's what drives everything at the end. Like if you're working, everyone just trying to get a promotion and beat the next guy up.
Yeah.
And that happens in science too, where someone that understands the universe probably way better than I do would have his ego more in front of.
An interesting point there would be that it takes two people,
right,
to prove a law sometimes, but then the whole world takes a century to accept it.
Right.
You still have people who don't believe in some of the natural laws or science which have been established.
Which is mind-boggling, right? Like, they themselves can do the experiment and come out with the same result as I would.
They don't need to. It's outside their zone of comfort.
That's the key point. It's outside their comfort zone. Yeah. Right? They don't want to.
You can reap the benefits of it. And there are some people who are driven by it, and the society can improve.
Because they feel they already have the answers in this text that they've received. Why go out this book when all the answers are here? And I don't know. And that book also tells you not to question it. So like, it's like a bubble that you're trapped in.
Yeah, so it's like, bro, I may be wrong, but don't question.
Yeah. The point that you made about Ramanujan is really interesting because the point that you said is absolutely true. There's people in his field that didn't want to accept the truth in a way.
Right.
But also the level of wokeness is definitely on level because he was so batshit woke.
Yeah.
Like he was so far ahead that even because mathematicians even today are mining through his notebooks and trying to understand like what the heck he was talking about.
Yeah. So serious?
He discovered Ramanujan. He lived in like Madras or
Chennai, Madras. Yeah.
In like a village, so he had no formal education.
So how does he wake up so much?
So according to him, he used to get his mathematics in his head from his God.
Well, do you know what God? Oh, you guys haven't watched the movie.
He said
Hindu, but I know. I
can tell you from his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was visualizing.
I can tell you that none of those Hindu gods ever explained infinity.
Right, absolutely.
They didn't explain shit to me.
I mean, it's
you're not special.
I mean, God is man-made, like for most part. Like there is some amazing scientist somewhere who wrote it, but he was scared that if I don't cite God, it won't get published. you know?
But if there's any proof for God, for me, it's the story of Ramanujan because it's incredible. When he was 13 years old, he invented trigonometry. He went to school and he realized that it had already been discovered and he was super disappointed in a small village.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to invent crazy stuff that
but it's logical. You see, trigonometry is something which all of us now agree on because it's a reality.
Right. So you would say that it's somebody that's himself speaking in his own mind and he's attributing it to God.
I mean, he can, like because we don't like empty spaces. We don't like blanks in our psychic reading of things. At all. Like, I don't like blanks. That's why people follow astrology.
Yeah.
Like, they would have a bad day and they would read the horoscopes. Like, it seems like it's going to work out well. Somehow, however ridiculous it may seem, but people still believe that.
Yeah, I think that's a logical explanation.
And then you ask them what is astrology, and they can't answer you. Like, why are these symbols here? I don't know.
Yeah, and the fact that the universe is expanding. Yeah, somehow the astrological charts still work.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
NASA last month they updated the astrological calendar.
There are 13 now.
Yeah, they were saying that it's moved, so like everyone has either shifted by 1 or 2.
Yeah. I hated it actually. I mean,
so they're like, this is a true.
Still, as a man of science, I was such a proud Scorpio. Yeah. You know, I was like, I'm supposedly like super intense, passionate, and things like that. And it's like I used to feel like, okay, I have so much, and then I'm like, oh shit, I'm a Sagittarius. God, fuck. Okay.
I'm a Sagittarius.
Now you gotta change.
Yeah.
You gotta be docile and shit now.
Yeah.
you gotta be. You have no choice.
You can't be as woke.
The astrological calendar has spoken.
Really? What do you mean I'm not Sagittarius anymore?
I don't know if you are.
You shifted.
Shift. There was a shift in the star positions.
Yeah. Oh wow!
That caused zodiac signs to change.
Yeah.
Wow.
Actually, so now there's a 13th sign which has been introduced. So which reduces Scorpio to like a meager 15 days or 12 days.
Yeah, cuts his time. Because with the shift in another one.
And there is something with an O. I think that's the and I'm that.
Wow.
So weird. Like I was like, God, I have no understanding now because when
did this happen?
I think a month ago they tweeted out the new calendar. Wow. They're saying the actual astrologers don't factor in the time shift that they're talking about because with the time expanding and things are moving, so you got to calculate it. So everyone's astrology symbol I think moved by a month or 2 depending.
Totally makes sense. I mean, I personally felt my personality changed.
Think about that poor soul who got a lower back tattoo or something.
Yeah, right. They're screwed.
He's screwed.
So real quick, Ramanujan, he died at the age of 32. What?
Yeah, he had some
Jesus
gave him all that knowledge and he took him away.
Yeah, and he was like,
that guy is incredible, man.
we don't have a huh.
I don't understand
how he had some Parkinson's. No,
he had
some
something
disease,
really bad,
and at that time they didn't have vaccines for it and stuff like that.
And he went back to the village too.
Yeah,
I just think if we're able to preserve these kind of minds and just think about Ramanujan hanging out with Einstein, Newton, and all these guys still thinking today, where we would be. Yeah,
beginning of time.
It's difficult because I think everybody has their own journey.
Of course.
That's the thing, because your understanding of reality, rationale, is sometimes rooted in something so personal that you cannot dissociate it and distribute it as you feel it. Say Ramanujan visualized numbers. His understanding was not counting this, but it was in the mind.
Yeah, it's insane.
You see, a lot of people say this. I think some of them who, if you know savants, they call the savants who are numbers. These people are called savants. You can look it up. So these people perceive a general notion of, say, numbers, say mathematical savant. We would call it savant is a general term like a scholar, but they're basically geniuses, you can say. They would perceive things with a enervated sense of understanding, in the sense, when I would see number, I can only actually process this much of information at a point of time because of the way I do it, but they do it in a different way where they can process a larger volume, which kind of expands, in a certain sense, their memory related to that number, those numbers, or the way they visualize it or the way they work it out. It's just basically both of us are doing the same thing, computing, but my OS and his OS work on completely different algorithms. Okay. And when you talk about these people, and even Ramanujan and all, whatever drives it, and whether he would be able to discuss it, or even socially whether they can discuss it, that's also a problem,
Yeah, because it could be a different...
Yeah, I think in Cosmos you might have noticed that they were talking about these battles of jealousy between Newton and there was this other very famous scientist, Hooke.
The microscope.
The guy,
inventor.
Hooke's law. The guy who
total douchebag, by the way.
Spring, super douchebaggy because
sounds like a superhero.
Super douche.
Marvel's gonna make a movie on him soon.
He invented, not invented actually. I mean,
a douchebag.
Kind of. No, yeah. And like a rational and evolved douchebag is worse. So he was trying to curb Newton's research, right? And now and you would say that a rational individual like that should think about the advancement of human thought and rationale and scientific thought behind it, but he did not. I mean, he was working on his own personal motivations, and that is why we can kind of say that it's not like the fact that there are so many geniuses. We don't have like a cumulative jump. We are still kind of reaping, and all this is sort of random. You don't know. Now, while discussing this, we might just skip over some nice nugget of wisdom, which would be unearthed by someone later in 20 years, and we're like, hey, do you remember over bourbon we thought about that? And something similar. And that's how reality, I think that's how it works. These interactions might... so Einstein... In one way, you said Ramanujan might have had a conversation with a lot of the greatest geniuses in the world at that point of time, and hopefully would have come up with something much more evolved than where we are now. But then sometimes when that kind of positive interaction happens also, so Einstein took the mathematical model of Lorentz and put it back, transposed it into this situation with space-time, and he became famous.
Right.
Even though he did not win the Nobel Prize for that. That's the beautiful part. Nobody was trusting that theory for a long time.
Right.
He got the Nobel Peace Prize for photoelectric effect, which is a much different phenomena. Yes.
So what we really need is a cumulative jump.
Yeah.
An evolution of the entire human brain.
We need that kind of luck.
Forward.
Yeah, we need that luck or chance. So many things are happening. We hopefully have like a positive aggregation of efforts somewhere, which now in more or less it's happening.
Right.
No matter what scientists believe or whatever the implications are, they're still working hand in hand. To the extent that an ideal system would allow, like whatever system would allow.
Sure.
But it almost seems like we might even be like, never mind the biology, and we're like, we don't want to wait anymore, and we're going to use technology just push forward, upgrade our own RAM and memory.
I think people are still doing that. Yeah. I wouldn't put it past that, because when we in the university stage, you're not limited by anything, right? When people ask people,
I mean, to an extent, we're limited by some things, right?
Not limited by something in terms of actually when they tell you to pick up your topic of research.
Okay.
They don't put guidelines that they should be.
However, you're still limited by your biology, right? I mean, for instance, you were saying that you have these geniuses, right? But we're not all geniuses. There's only a few segments of society that is.
Oh, you mean, okay. So, I mean, that way you're right. I was actually probably talking about a different thing. So, yes, when you say that, yes, our processing capabilities are obviously limited when you actually chart it out in terms of the number. But if you think about the functioning of the body, it's so complex that if you were to able to recreate it in a certain way, in terms of a computing sense, that they were all contributing to the same cause, then you can possibly achieve in the same directions. But someone has to design that.
There's a lot of systems.
Yeah. So how do you even verify that it works? So yes, I mean, with supercomputing and again, WestWorld segue, the bots actually, amazing, not the bots, the hosts, sorry. The hosts visualize their memory in a much more clearer fashion.
It is so my favorite part
than us, because we have a blurry sense of our memories, right?
Because our memories are whatever information we have of that time, and over time, obviously, as being human, we forget a lot of it, the smell, the feels, and all of that. These guys, though, they have like a solid state drive in their head. They remember every little detail, so they can relive the moment.
It's almost going back in time.
Yeah. It is exactly
reliving everything. Every sensation. It's incredible.
I never
going back in time.
I'm all for AI and like the futurist talk, and I think that's like the next thing. I feel like part of our missions of human beings is to create AIs and send them out in space. And I never factored in that if they can recall all their memories, how much of a pain and happiness they're gonna have to relive every second. Because when they get shot or stabbed, they can relive that experience
actually in a real sense,
feel that same exact pain that they felt that they were dying. And then if they think about something joyous, they can relive that at the same time. I mean, that's terrifying. Like, I never factor in. Is that morally?
That's wrong.
Correct? Would you want to...
No, that's incorrect. That's what they're trying to do by actually...
They should have a span of memory where it deletes like ours. They can recall bits and pieces.
Yeah, that happened because of the reveries, right? Because in the first episode, he coded into reveries where they could actually tap into their previous experiences, which kind of broke the whole system of them actually refreshing or rebooting in a certain sense, because they had these flashes where they could actually almost live that moment at that place. But they're a host. It's a program running in their head.
Yeah. So is your question then, is it ethically correct to put them through the experience or to give them the ability to remember it in greater detail, or both?
Since there are going to be artificial intelligence, they're going to have a better processing speed or RAMs or than our brain, so they will relive everything. I never factored that in, but so then I was thinking about it as I'm watching the show. Is it even ethically correct to bring these things to life if they can recall the death of their daughter, if you will?
It's the same as the ethical question about whether to have a child or not, right? They could easily go through the pain of the experience of seeing someone die.
Right.
They're going to remember it.
Yeah, and
but you're not going to stop yourself from.
But the thing with human beings is time heals us, right? So if there is a death in the family, time will heal that wound. So we'll slowly forget about the pain that we lost, and time will change it, right? Or these things we'll never forget about it.
I don't think something else replaces the memory and the experience of that death.
Because we have limited capacity. Yes.
Yeah, memory fades.
Yeah, but if you're put through that same situation again, like let's say you lose a grandparent,
right,
and you lose another grandparent 10 years down the line, I think you're going to feel the same pain,
right?
An equivalent amount of pain, you're going to remember that pain that you felt 10 years ago.
So you're saying if it's ethically correct or not? I think it's not ethically correct, right? Because they're reliving that moment like it's happening now over and over.
No, I think
even more so, it's the idea. Okay, when you stab a host with a knife, is it just simulating the act of feeling pain, or is it really feeling pain?
It's actual pain.
It is
actual pain, right? Because I was thinking even you and I, if we get stabbed by it, but then you turn off some gene for pain, I won't feel it either.
No, they're supposed to feel pain, but I mean, they can reduce the sensation of it, but that drives their character. Like that is what would tell the host that, okay, something wrong is happening. So it will really go...
it's fucked up.
I think what Aditya is saying is that it's important for us, since we have maybe a shorter span of memory, even if we would relive the same pain. What they are saying is that the hosts, when they remember things, they live it exactly the same. So
again and again.
They have no decay in their memory.
So their decision making would be different than ours, basically, because we are getting into a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Once burnt, twice shy, they call it, right?
Yeah.
And like they have been burnt, and when they feel the burn, they feel the burn.
Yeah. Think about this.
But sadly, America did not.
Think about this scenario. Let's say, like in the situation of Batman, if you will, where a guy kills his parents, right?
Yeah.
So like his memory, I mean, he does have that anger and that pain drives him to become this, superhero or whatever.
Yeah.
You can take a different scenario where AI will always relive that experience each and every day. And is it going to go out and do good things or bad things with this pain? Because now like is it going to be more violent? Is it going to... So it's kind of interesting. Like you're absolutely correct. Because like if someone kills your grandparent or father or whatever, you might in time as a human being overcome that pain and forgive that person as taking the higher ground.
Yeah.
But will AI will be able to do that? Or if they're living that pain of watching someone die every day?
It's the same question with human, right?
Yeah.
Like if the human has a really good memory, they're going to relive that experience.
Good point.
But the thing with memory is we have therapy for us. You'll go to a counselor or you'll go to a psychologist and they'll sit you down and you'll talk to them. And what is memory? That's also information. So they'll tell you to interpret it differently. So it doesn't feel as bad. Oh, he's in a better place now. So you interpret it differently, that he's in a better place. So you kind of find joy in that,
Yeah.
So it's interpretation.
Depends on the memory, actually, whether you're threatened by it or you're comforted by it, actually,
right.
So in a very general classification, right?
So could you reprogram for the host, say, hey, whatever happened, you could reprogram the memory so it's not as painful? Or
first of all, it was a glitch. Yeah. Because somebody caused it. It was not meant to be designed that way.
Plus because the hosts don't have a sense of timeline.
Right.
Because for them, they're reliving basically a Groundhog Day situation.
Exactly.
Right. That's our reality.
Mental torture.
That's how our reality is different. The Man in Black was there for a year. He knows what has happened to all these characters. They don't know, because they are coming alive every day when they're waking up. They're thinking their life was fine. That's fine. So they can't even relate right now. It's like, why is this memory? And they say it's a distant dream.
Yeah.
It's a voice of God and things like that. Yeah. So there's a little confusion there. But for example, if they think that they have been killed, they cannot count back to the days. Like I can say when I was 5, I burnt my hand on this thing. And I remember this because there's this scar here. But I'm putting the time point there. They don't have the time point. It might have happened yesterday.
There's no connection.
Yeah.
Because for them it's just a flash and they're reliving it, and then they have no idea when
it does not attach. It does not subscribe, or it does not align with their cornerstone memory, which is upon which their identity is based on.
There's that one, I forgot the lady's name, but she has the
Maeve.
The daughter.
Maeve. Yeah.
She has the daughter, and I mean she hasn't gone crazy or anything. She relives it here and there, but she really loses it in that moment when it triggers.
She's also realizing that there are masters, and that she's being punished in this way. Yeah. And so her brain, since she is a computer, she's kind of when they give her more capabilities, she's just overriding her structure, and then it's exponentially going to grow bigger and faster, and she's going to get super smart, and she can and super strong too, because they're robots, right? They can use their strength to just destroy people.
That's the creepiest.
And then they can even get to a point where they can reprogram their brain to turn off the off switch, which she's kind of overcoming, and also exponentially grow to a point where they can control their other own host, which she's also doing. So it's AI is, I don't know.
So, to me, it seems like it's almost like a side effect or like a double-edged sword. If you're going to be super intelligent, you're going to have super memory in a way too.
Yeah.
And
non-decaying memory.
Yeah, because you need that to constantly build on things. So you kind of have to have that unfortunate mental torture in a way.
Yeah, they don't want to delete stuff, and that's what the lobotomy or what of the hosts they refer to when they put the drill up. Right. It's kind of like a cinematographic representation of what's happening, that we're destroying all the memory and all the code that you have.
Oh, I see.
But since she was an older model or something, that didn't happen properly, and then Bernard was able to reprogram her, to listen.
She had like all that old legacy data. Sitting around.
Crazy stuff, man.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Can't wait for tonight.
Like, what the hell is memory, man? Like, if we think about it, like, in us sitting in this room, we're just having. We have our 5 senses, and they enter our brain through whatever sight, or listening or touch or whatever, and they get converted into electrical signals that go into our brain. So when this memory gets stored, like, it's kind of.
It's like neuron impulses, and they go in a certain path, and that's like a memory.
Yeah, it's like a highway.
I think it's correlating certain experiences with previous experiences. Right? For example. Like if you think of a goldfish, right? I think it's a goldfish has like a memory of 0.5 seconds or something like that. So it's going to smell something 0.5 seconds ago. Right. And then within the next 0.5 seconds, it can use that experience to inform what it's going to do within that 0.5 seconds.
Right.
But then after that, it can't.
Yeah, so it's like Dory from Finding Nemo.
God, that movie was great.
Yeah, it's sad to like be in that state too of that short-term memory loss.
Did you watch that movie?
Yeah, it's devastating.
One of the best movies I've ever seen.
It's really devastating.
I was so emotional.
It's so sad. Like, why you just walk 5? She swims like 5 feet and she forgets why she's there.
It's like the animals' Alzheimer's.
So horrible.
So to answer your question, like, what is memory? It's just a way for us to inform future actions based on what we experienced prior
to it, so we can recall that reaction.
It's a point of relativity.
I mean, to me personally, I am my memories, really. If you take all my memories away, I'm not me anymore.
You are a sum of your experiences.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Snap diggity.
We're like memory recorders. Humans, that's what we are, in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if there could be a WestWorld area where you can go to where they wipe your memory off, and
I would pay.
And then you wake up, and then you just wake up in bed.
Oh my God!
And then what are you gonna do? Like, you have no idea of any history, knowledge, people.
There's a movie, right? The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I was just about to bring that up.
Which one?
Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Is that what it is? He just wakes up?
No, you can wipe off your sad memories or something like that. I don't.
But it ends up wiping away everything, I think.
Something like that. And then the funny part is, I think there's a very beautiful scene in which is similar to what happened with Maeve. Like when they're going to say that, oh, these are all the bad memories and we're going to wipe it off your life. And he's like, no, maybe you should leave it there. Because you're so attached to your memory.
And I think it was her daughter, and she's like, that's all I have left of her.
Yeah, she was saying, and I think Jim Carrey was doing the same thing in the movie. So
I love that movie.
What is a good memory, though? A good memory is you only know it's good if you know what's bad at the same time. So
it's from the fight and flight thing, comfort and threat. Actually, if you think about as animals,
right?
Whether you're comforted to something, so you are attracted to that thing, or you are threatened by it, so you move away. I mean, that's possibly the first classification of any kind of memory or information helpful to you. That would help you, because I think as animals, and that's where it comes from. But then,
that's a really good point. Like, because with Arya, we have a dog, right?
Yeah.
If I show her my right hand with a treat in it, she's going to be quite happy. She's going to wag her tail, put her ears behind, like, come happily. But if I do the same thing right next to her crate, she's not going to come, because she knows it's time for her to go inside the crate and hang out in that tiny space.
Yeah. Right. I was telling him that Arya is a host. because her cycle is kind of constant. Like our lives are changing. Right. We are watching Stephen Colbert, Trevor Noah, whatever is coming out. There's some new information being added.
Yeah. But for them.
But we open I come back and I open the crate and she knows where to go, where to do her.
Yeah.
She was pee and poop and everything, and she kind of figured it out. Okay, I have to do that, whatever. And then she would come out, and then there's a small gap. Like if she's not put in the crate back. And then there's this whole gap of time. She doesn't know what to do with that time.
Okay, I never had this time.
Yeah, I want to go back to that one point that Shaz made because I thought it kind of blew my mind for a second. When he said that if you have to have bad memories to know what a good memory is, because everything is relative to each other.
Yeah.
Right.
So what happens if you take all the bad memories away? What happens to the good memory? Is it good anymore?
Probably the weight of their goodness
goes down.
Yeah, it goes
significantly
down.
to almost, it'd be average.
Just becomes a memory almost.
Yeah.
Whether you take it away, you can the question lies, I think, whether you attach a definition to memories or you attach a definition to perception. So whether the perception of bad still exists when you just have good memories or not, that whether the chicken or the egg situation, right? Really. Mm-hmm. Was your perception completely independent before you experienced something which was horrible to you to think that this is bad, and that is when your perception was built? Or was the perception already there and something of that sort happened and it kind of fit together? You know, it's like, okay, this is what is bad, or this is what is good.
Yeah,
but that perception comes in. But that perception comes in when you have that bad memory. I feel. You can't perceive it unless it happens.
It's informed by your experience.
Yeah, it's a relative scale. So you would never. I think the judgment from good and bad would cease to exist. Actually, if there was everything was white, so people get the message. So subtle.
It's all white noise.
So does good and evil or good and bad even exist?
It's all a matter of perspective. Right?
I think so, right? That's what I think too.
Yeah, it's a perspective. It's a coinage of term completely when we say something is evil.
Are there laws of nature that define what is good and evil?
No.
I think in the last podcast when we were doing with Hazel, like you said something cool from that book, Shantram. Like,
so I always
ever since then I've been thinking about it. Like that's such a fucking beautiful.
And for people that still haven't heard of it, there's a book called Shantram. It's by like a Australian convict who wrote it. Shantaram. Amazing book. The one line that you're referring to, it's where this guy talks about how do you define good and evil. It's very complex, right? Because there's so many perspectives. So his idea was that, and first of all, you put down what we're trying to do in the world. So if we're trying to move humanity forward, human progress forward, then anything that moves humanity forward is good. And anything that pulls it back is bad. It's evil.
It's evil.
So is religion evil?
Right now it is. If you go by that scale, because it's pushed.
It's holding us back.
Yeah, it's not allowing you to ask questions, and it's pulling you back in a way. So from my perspective,
so religion does a lot of things.
Yes.
Some of the things that it does are bad. Most of the things that it does are bad. But some of the things that it does are good.
Good, right?
I think a lot of
religion comfort.
Yeah. Where it becomes a part of culture and.
Yeah, but I think that's the question is how much is religion influenced by culture, or is culture influenced by religion? I think it's a good question to ask.
It's probably both, right?
You're probably going hand in hand like space time.
Yeah, because I think if you look about religious persecution or any kind of problems happening wherever. What we consider as problems to the human world or humanitarian problems. Okay, so that's an aspect there. There are humanitarian problems, but then some people are choosing to not see that because it kind of is dictated by the religion, they say, or that is how we have been living, which is culture. So now what comes first? When we say prehistoric man, for example, right? And you said that they look at the sun and they think that, there's some heavenly personification of us. What an amazing guess to begin with. A personification, God should be just like us. It's like, he's just like me,
2 arms, 2 legs, beard.
Yeah, it's
Why not a dog?
Doesn't go to work on Sundays. God's taking a break.
But the sun irony is amazing, right? Because we are made of stars.
Yeah.
So kind of our gods in a way.
Yeah.
It's our precursor.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start a religion.
Your corner. Yeah. Your cornerstone.
I'll join it.
Yeah.
Call you Jesus.
No, we call it cornerstone memory. That's all. Yeah. That's what God is. Our cornerstone memory. For most of the cultures, cornerstone memory is God. Upon which your personality, your family's beliefs, and the days you should not eat this, or you should come together wearing these clothes and throwing shit on fire, is is based on a cornerstone memory.
There was this cool experiment done. I forgot where I wanted to cite it. I can't recall where I saw or heard it.
Bible?
No. But there was this experiment done with pigeons where they put them in a cage, and then they have these test tubes that, if they go and they peck on this button, and it'll drop a treat. So when pigeons are in their, they can smell that the food is in the tube, so they go towards it. And when they accidentally hit this button, it drops them a treat. So it's kind of like, what's that word called when you're programming them?
Conditioning them.
Yeah, you're conditioning them that every time you hit this thing, then you get food.
It's called Pavlovian response. Actually, yeah. So I think Pavlov was a Russian scientist who basically
the basic term. He gave it more context.
I think you were talking the same thing. Conditioning is probably better word for this context, but I think the experiment was that there was a Russian scientist, Pavlov. He used to have a bell and a dog. And
a Russian scientist named Pavlov?
Pavlov.
Pavlov.
Pablo is it's a name.
He's Colombian. He's a scientist.
He's a narco scientist.
Pablo
Escobar.
Yeah. But going back to that experiment, regardless of what that condition was called, so what they did is, so they had two sets of experiments where one where it hits it always gets that treat, and the second one it'll just be completely fucking random. So there will be a time where the pigeon is pecking his back or whatever, and when it does that, a treat drops. So then it gets confused, and then it starts for nonstop of 10, 15 minutes. It keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again, hoping
himself.
Yeah, hoping that it will get rewarded with that treat. And what they were trying with that experiment was to show was that's how our ancestors were in the beginning. There were these random events where it started raining and all these crops grew. Now, whatever I did has to be tied with it. And then you would start these rituals and cultures. So you can do these experiments with these pigeons, and that's how you kind of...
You don't even have to do them with pigeons. As recently, I know we talked about this before, as recently as the Vietnamese War, there was an area in Vietnam, I believe, that needed supplies, right? It needed food. It needed, stuff like that. So there was a U.S. Plane that dropped supplies to them. All right, these guys are living isolated in in a forest.
You're talking about that?
So
the civilization?
Yeah, no, not them. This was people in Vietnam or something. Mm-hmm. And so they received this food and all that stuff. And then when they came back, they flew back over or something. They saw a structure made out of wood, and it was an airplane. So they started praying to it.
So they made a monument of an airplane and did it.
Exactly.
So, and then going to your point, imagine if those Vietnamese were just for some random reason, they were dancing before that fell down, then they would think that, hey, if we keep dancing, then we'll get food falling from the sky like manna.
So the rain dance.
And that's how you started religion.
Yeah.
It's a movie, right? The gods are crazy. There's two African kids sitting there, and there's a plane flying overhead. And it drops a bottle. The bottle drops, and they've never seen a glass bottle.
Right.
So they start fighting over the possession of that glass bottle because they think it's really special. Sacred. And how something so simple being introduced into a culture can create such a big divide that people are now jealous that he has with him in possession something which nobody else does, and that's a social factor now. Right. There are forces kind of.
So all three religions fighting over the Dome of the Rock?
Yeah.
All three.
It comes down to lack of information. Since that object fell and they don't know what it is, now one needs to claim it.
Yeah.
But if they had information and just an average bottle that just fell, that wouldn't be meaningless.
It's making the wrong connections between two events. Remember the Aztec one that we talked about before?
Yeah.
Where you would when an eclipse would happen, the Aztecs thought the gods are not happy with us and the sun might not come back up. Yeah. So they would sacrifice their people on top of the temple.
Thousands.
And the blood would trail down their pyramid structure thing. Yeah. And when that happened, and of course, the eclipse would finish and the sun would come back up and they're like, oh, it worked. and they kept doing it.
It's false equivalency. Yes. I think that's what.
That's right.
But they also at the time had a hypothesis, and they tested it. Oh, I killed someone. It worked. I killed someone. They kept doing it.
Yeah. Too bad they didn't look at. Too bad they didn't try not doing it and see if it didn't work.
Yeah.
Now there's.
Well, now there's a wall.
That will be an experiment, right? Because someone also has to confirm that hypothesis. So what their fact became true. It also needs to be tested. That's why there's a scientific method, because that law of nature needs to apply to everyone.
And thinking about that event, how would it have started? Like the first time they saw an eclipse, there must have been some guy in power. He's like, I know what to do. We need to sacrifice someone. I hate you. You come here. We're gonna kill this guy, and watch, the sun will come up. They did.
It's. Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe they were getting rid of people they didn't like. The person in power, he's like, that guy's against me. Like Saddam was saying, we're going to kill everyone that wants my power.
They had a lot of wars within their tribal areas. So that whole area, like each person was a ruler of certain lands. And
they used to only sacrifice prisoners, by the way.
Yeah, but those prisoners were from
the other tribes. Yes.
Other
so it makes sense for them to sacrifice them to whatever gods. Now we have a wall, so the blood stops.
Yeah. That's the hope.
But so like I talk about it a lot like this. So does information always lead to a moral higher decision making? Because like if we can say if there's lack of information, then it results you to do something irrational. But like if someone has like the conversation that we're having now, if everyone had this knowledge or information, would we all be making more morally ethical decisions?
Yeah, I mean,
and I tend to believe the answer is yes. But then when watching WestWorld and looking at AIs, if their level of information is escalating exponentially like this, are they gonna make good decisions, or are they gonna just go like, you know what? Like,
I mean, it's hard to tell, really, to be very honest.
I mean, at what point is too much information bad for us, or?
I think that there's one factor there that you can't predict, which is emotion, right?
Yeah.
True.
You could give
that can swing the needle, I guess, right?
Election.
Yeah, exactly. This election, you could give me all the I could be Donald Trump. You give me all the information,
right?
I could be a Donald Trump supporter. You give me all the information saying that I'm the greatest douchebag to walk on the face of the earth,
right?
But if
more than Hook.
No. But then if he makes me feel a certain way, I'm gonna throw all that out the window and make that one.
That's a really good point. With most relationships.
Fantastic.
It's with most relationships.
So
that's what happens.
So emotion triumphs information.
But the idea of a super intelligent, the idea of a super intelligent being or robot would be that you could almost bring empathy and emotion
down
to zero.
Yes.
And just focus on information.
Oh shit.
So it would be everything would be objective.
Yeah, but we are so much driven. I think so much more has been if you take together a bunch of scientists, there have been developments in the line of science. But after the experiment is a success, everyone goes for a beer. That's emotion. Where do you think you feel more intense? That thing drives it.
Right.
You know, and somehow that's in a way, we don't need to feel that we are limited by it. I think it's a much more beautiful way to live with the fact.
You can close the mic. Sorry,
it's a much
Too
better.
Close now. No, I'm kidding.
It's a much more beautiful way to live.
And I agree. I think we're gonna get to a point in the far future where these super intelligent beings would be like, this is amazing that I have all this information, but you know what? I want to live. I want emotion. Yeah. And they will program emotion into them.
They'll be like, have you watched the movie Equilibrium?
Yeah.
By Christian Bale. That's I think we were discussing actually on our way here that every representation of a futuristic Earth is always order, so that there's maximum efficiency of thought. There's not too much for you to get distracted, and there is lack of emotion. Because you're trying to suppress emotion actually about what you're saying, because super intelligent beings would not waste time feeling happy about a donut rubbing their belly or something like that. You know, like it's not, what is that doing to you? You know, how is that helping you? Go
it's
just
not
eat
efficient, right?
Yeah,
makes me happy.
Eat that tablet and just be happy. Like, don't need to take a dump also. You know, like, whatever. Yeah. So somehow that represents that thing. And in that movie, what they were showing is that they were killing off people who are reading books or even watching movies or doing art, which for a lot of people is sort of in a way to express something which is not particularly scientific or rational.
Right.
I mean, science what we call science is might try to explain where these emotions are coming from, but we can't take them out of the picture just as well. And it kind of is comforting, or it at least is another variable which is yet to be, deciphered, or kind of the strands pulled together. I mean, psychologists and psychiatrists and everyone, they do that.
Right.
They try to attribute and put it into pockets, and they still try to find it. And there's a whole different branch of science for that. And when you talk about efficiency, when we talk about bots, intelligent, we should understand that when we developed machines, they had a purpose. Our life, if we start labeling kids, carpenter is born, a mechanic is born, a plumber is born, we can't tag babies with labels saying that, hey, you need to actually, need to have large fingers to actually handle these things. Oh, okay, you don't have hands. Okay, your hands are faulty. You do something else. We can't. And that is where we are trying to bring that kind of classification into human race so that everything is efficient. We can be a sustaining race, actually. Now, what is important? Is our emotional consciousness important so that we are alive and we sacrifice and we all become machines, and I perform a function, you perform a function. I paint the wall, you dry it, and we'll all live.
That's a really good way to look at it. Yeah.
Is that life worth living?
What is the balance? Is it worth going to that extreme where you completely take out emotion, and then you're super efficient in your pursuit?
I think that's what communism is, isn't it? No, honestly, I think that's what communism is.
Yeah, communism.
I feel emotion is what makes us different. That's how you would react.
It also clouds your judgment too, though, right?
I'm just saying.
No, you're right. Yeah. I'm with you, but I'm saying it kind of also like clouds your judgment, and it can swing into wrong directions.
It's a package which comes in. It's like the MSG in Chinese food. Too much and you can have problems, but little bit it's amazing and you want to eat it again.
Yeah. And it's also the only way that we know, because we've only lived with emotion. We don't know how it would be without it, and we're afraid of the unknown. So until we experience no emotion, you don't really know. I mean, we can only say from a human point of view that it's better to live this way, but we really don't know.
What I meant to say was that if you're at that level, you're almost like an AI now. You're a robot. I mean, emotion's what gives you life and brings you to life. Otherwise, you're just programmed. You're just going to keep making the most efficient and smartest move over and over.
How do you know you're
not
programmed right now?
Oh, God.
You might be programmed right now because you have your DNA, your genes. You might be a robot.
Are we discussing free will right now?
Well, you could jump into it, but
we have no free will.
All right, well, that was good. Moving on.
But you were talking about AI and giving that when we designed it in the beginning, we would give it purpose.
Yeah.
But how I imagine it is, like, even if we do
not
that,
AI, I said machines, actually.
Machines, right?
Yeah,
okay, so...
but even AI scenario, I would say...
You would give it a purpose.
Yeah.
But now we look at ourselves. We are tinkering with our own DNA and our genes. We're doing gene editing. So, and we're not even that intelligent. We're not supercomputers. So why would AI in the future not start repurposing themselves as well?
They would, yeah.
Right?
Well, why not? That's definitely possible.
So we're screwed.
So
we are.
So do we intervene and stop them, or
that's what Elon Musk is trying to do right now, right? Musk and Gates, they have this not anti-AI, but sort of this temperance movement for the AI.
Yeah,
they're scared. Right? Yeah, they're like, we should have regulations. We should be watching what people are doing and not just letting them go nuts with AI.
Yeah,
because it's dangerous.
It's no longer a fun experiment anymore.
Yep.
So and the AI, Sorry. Oh,
I was saying it's gonna happen eventually, right? So like, it's
possible.
Just
eventually, it's going to happen.
Are you against AIs or what?
Well, no, I'm really divided. I actually haven't read so much into it. I just get the perceived reality version of it. Obviously, I can't talk on the mathematical scale of like how it is supposed to happen, or if there are limits to it. Like based on our understanding of math, when we say artificial intelligence, you're basically making a bot take a decision in itself based on its previous information, data. But its capacity to retain information is much higher.
Right.
And if it can compute at that level, it can probably make far more complex decisions in number of odds. So it can probably play chess with you.
Yeah.
And can defeat you. And
they took our jobs.
Yeah.
It can play chess with a million people at the same time, probably.
Exactly.
Via internet or whatever.
Yeah. So that's
it can know every detailed history.
And if we think that our existence is important in the universe, for some reason we want to protect the human species, then is that
it's gonna
still the human species which is existing?
It's going to interfere with us, certainly. And something that WestWorld tags so well with this, again, I love that one line when he asks, I think one of the girls, he's like, "Are you real?" And she says, "If you can't tell,
does it matter?
It doesn't matter if you can't tell." And
wow,
what a beautiful, awesome line.
Ex Machina was all about that.
I went right on IMDb and gave it a 10.
You know what was beautiful about that scene, which I don't know, not many people pointed it out. How was that host conscious of the fact that she was a host?
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Did you get
That's a very important question.
That's such an important question. That
you mind fucking me for no reason.
My brain
malfunction. Yeah, because everyone else thinks that
because she
weren't
had
programmed to think that way. Because I remember somebody else, one of the other hosts got a similar question, and their answer was like, "What do you like?" Didn't even understand the question.
I think the writers messed up. They just wanted to get that one line in. They're like, that line is so epic.
It was a trailer line where
of course he would pick it up.
Which is so weird because I think if you see Bernard walking in and he's like, "This cannot be.
Yeah,
I cannot be a host." He's saying this.
Yeah,
scientist,
right?
Intelligent.
Yeah,
creating those hosts.
Yeah,
but this first generation host is like, well, what do you think?
Maybe it was maybe she was programmed to say it. You know, like in the beginning, maybe that question is asked a lot.
That's a possibility. Yeah,
you know,
that would make sense.
Yeah,
but you think you understand my point, right? Here, right? It seems so like how was she knew that there are these humans and hosts? Then you know that's so odd.
Maybe the guest interfacing hosts were programmed.
But now she's in the park right now.
That's true.
Oh, that same girl is in the park.
That's true.
Yeah, because I was gonna say maybe there's two different versions.
She's
maybe there's
everywhere.
Maybe she
plays 3 parts, I think. Right?
She has
different timelines.
Parts. Yeah, different timelines. Though,
Okay, yeah.
Because when William is coming in, that's the Man in Black. So that would be that was her first position. The second would be the third.
She was square dancing in the first timeline before the park opened, and then she got killed by Teddy, according to his memory. So we can't. There are a lot of.
Well, come on. Tie back to something you said earlier that maybe. About human species, by creating AIs, would that risk losing the human species in the universe? Would that wipe us out? And then a byproduct will be intelligent life and AI.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot. And the human species timeline is going to end eventually, right?
Yes.
Shouldn't we get something out of it by creating AIs?
We may not just stay in Earth though. We might travel.
Yeah, but AIs can probably travel a lot easier and more efficiently than human body. Our biology limits us to how far we can travel.
Then what is your motivation of letting AI live? Why do we care? That's the point. Because you're dividing those things of emotion, right?
And you're gone.
So basically we have thrown out our emotion, and then it's basically just bits of mechanical clunking happening, nothing to change.
So I think one good reason to retain emotion is creativity, right? Creativity is informed by emotion.
Yeah.
And creativity does inform society, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Yeah. So that's one good reason to retain that in any AI species that we may want. I don't know why we would want to.
Yeah.
You're not in the AI camp?
If there's a slight...
No, I mean, it's the way we're going. It's going to happen.
It's the slight possibility that what would help, which might help with the AI thing. We are in the AI camp initially. Like, it doesn't matter. AI is really widespread. Anyway, already, if I'm looking for a jacket on Macy's, it's coming up on every WestWorld post I'm reading for some reason.
That's so true. Google follows you everywhere.
My God.
Until you buy it.
So creepy. I just don't want to Google anything anymore. So just saying that if there were a possibility that somehow after living through these many cycles, like in a rigid regime, the AI itself evolves to have some form of emotion, or what might be called emotion. We don't really know. Emotion is again a term here. We are tagging to that kind of a perception that we have, or that kind of feelings and all those things. Everything comes under that umbrella. When we think about AI, we think about its rigid structure and everything, and it's going to work to the T, and we are so sure about it's efficient. But the whole concept of intelligence itself tells you to actually learn from what is happening. So even if there is a small error in their judgment, there's a small lapse that might give rise to new terms, which might be emotion-like, may not be emotion-like, but it would be hard to distinguish it from something else. You get what I'm saying? They would become a part of life, and that would be sort of like a man-made evolution, but it's based on information and feedback loops because it's actually self-writing itself. So instead of replicating DNA, you're replicating code.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
It's
if you think about it, I think our emotion is also the same way, right? Because,
sort of, yeah.
Yeah, because what is happiness? Like if you're extremely happy when you eat Cold Stone cookie or ice cream, it's because you have an extremely high amount of dopamine released in you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right? So all of your emotion is informed by what your hormonal glands are releasing in response to what you think is good.
That's true, yeah.
So to the same point, like if you can inform the AI to release a certain amount of, or to write code that, or have your code basically release a certain amount of positive expression based on what you experience, then it's just the same thing.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, which simulates dopamine in a way.
Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Do we have something right now? Like, let's say if someone's like, going through depression, they take this pill and it releases dopamine.
Yeah, they take antidepressants.
Yeah,
that's what they call them. Okay, cool. Makes sense.
You're depressed, here's antidepressant.
Going back to your point of creativity and intelligence, are we certain that we cannot have intelligence and super creativity at the same time? Do you think creativity depends on emotion? On emotion, yeah.
Yeah, I think certain kinds of creativity does depend on emotion. Like, for example, Radiohead would never have written Creep if that lead singer hadn't been, treated like shit when he was in high school or whatever. I'm just hypothesizing.
Right. Someone confirmed this as a fact.
That's very true.
But then we also have the game No Man's Sky.
Right.
Which is basically, it's almost like creating like a super algorithm. It's not a great game. But
it's good now. I got a new update.
Yeah, but like for instance, there are not people out there creating all these robots. They set up all the mathematics that can do it. Right. That's still creative in a way, right? Because they put all the code there, and then the possibilities are there, even for Radiohead. And so they're discovering that information instead of creating it.
Can you enjoy that?
Is anything really created, or it could be that everything is just discovered?
Yeah, I would agree, right? It's informed by what you've experienced previously.
Right,
It is discovered.
To discover it, is that the creativity?
There's an aspect of probability, really, actually.
See, my problem is that super intelligence would be, okay, this is what's right. You're always going to be inside this box. What is creativity? It's thinking outside the box. You're out here now.
That's what we think. The creativity could be all those solutions in that box itself. We think we're thinking outside the box, but it's still in the box.
Technically,
it might be the edges of the box.
Technically, no matter what you do, you will always be in the box, which is the universe.
I would completely agree because Jimmy Page, Led Zeppelin's...
he's my hero.
Jimmy who?
Jimmy Page. So he's Led Zeppelin's
guitarist.
You know what he said? He said, I wouldn't be half the guitarist I am if it weren't for LSD.
Yeah.
So that tells you that his creative boundaries were expanded only because of a chemical reaction. That
any way to interpret the world in a different state of consciousness is good.
And I can kind of speak to that too. Like I've tried magic mushrooms, and with that experience, like my understanding, I mean, that led to this podcast, So like, because that experience and that emotions of just complete bliss of like happiness.
The real world.
Yeah, pretty much that. Like, you just wake up and like, whoa. You start like
just fantasy.
Keep going.
That's a good segue into something.
I have no idea what's happening.
Into infinity.
But taking some sort of like substance that releases like a chemical reaction that brings you to a different reality, and like, holy shit, like, what the fuck? You feel like your whole life has, in a sense, for me, been a waste. I've been doing things that didn't matter. Now I wake up, I see like a grid of like math. I try to see like geometry, and like I'm seeing patterns more than ever. So every time I'm walking from work and back to work, I always stop and like kind of just feel the atoms of wind just kind of grazing by me. I'm like, holy shit, I'm made of the same substance that is just fucking moving my fucking hair.
I think
it's kind of weird, bro.
And then you go crazy.
Did I jump in front of the train? Like,
too much.
Enough.
You got too happy.
Yeah.
No, feel the momentum.
It just like
too much dopamine.
Yeah, and it just changes
too much
like
dope.
It just changes your it just changes your outlook in life, and I could see how LSD or maybe even weed or other sort of like hallucinogens.
I think the way I sometimes think about drugs is like they make you, suppose if you're an instrument, they make your resolution grow higher, it's just you have more variables to fill. So if you were tasting 3 tastes of smell, 3 tastes before, like your sense of taste, it just has 3 categories. Now it's increased to 7.
It's amplified. Your experience is getting more. So like when I tried it, right? So like that thing just opens up your level of experience. So like your senses are just amplified so much. You can hear things more. You can see things more. You can
actually listen in 3D. That's what I felt.
Like, have you tried it?
Not on mushrooms. No.
Okay, wait.
Nothing.
You've heard stories.
I'm a grass farmer and just stuck to that.
But that's why they call it an altered state. Going back to the box, imagine you're in the top right corner of the box. That's where your mind has been. That's how you've lived your whole life.
You've been programmed to live there.
And then when you have an altered state inducing substance, it moves you to another corner. Now you have a whole new perspective. You can almost look back at that corner you were in before.
That's a really good way to
be like, whoa.
And the point is the box has always existed in its entirety.
You just needed this tool to help you access it and and see and perceive it. It's always been there, but you never even paid attention to it because you didn't have this tool. The same way like I didn't have a way to send you a text while you were driving. I didn't set a pigeon out there to see where you were at. Now I got this tool that allows you to give you a different,
This makes me feel so much more that there is no free will. If there is no outside of the box and all of the possibilities exist in this box, and it always has.
This is it. That's the point. This is it. That's the thing. And it's fine.
It's a series of if reactions. If this, then that.
We're just a bunch of
if then logic statements, right? So if I say this in this tone, how are you going to react? And then whatever chemical reaction you can have. A really person that's
might take dope
from the outside that created this maybe can mathematically predict all these reactions that you're going to have, I'm going to have, exactly what I'm saying. Because it's just if-then logic statements are just happening.
So we're all programmed. We're all kind of like AI.
Not that we're programmed. I feel we're more like chemical reactions.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of undo it, like how you were saying earlier, if you drop that glass and it shatters, like our thought process is probably the same way, and you can kind of undo it.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that we are all programmed over time. What's marketing doing to you? All the emotions you feel through your life. That's So something happens to me. That's how I'm going to react. It's because something happened earlier. So I am programmed throughout my life.
And that's a reaction to the memories you have recorded, your genes, and how they react to the marketing. Because not everyone is going to react the same way.
Of course,
correct. So
it's how you're programmed.
Correct. So you can take solace in the fact that you're the only one in the history of ever that's programmed this way. There's nobody who has ever existed or will ever exist that has your experience.
That's the perception.
Exactly. Thanks, man. I feel special.
The perception. As you said there,
he just programmed you.
He just conditioned you right now.
I'm special.
A lot of dope just went into my head.
Hey, Ma, guess what? I learned today I'm special.
You were always right, Ma. You always believed in me.
Yeah, we're all hosts that way.
I guess so.
The point is that even though, like as you said, yes, we are all programmed in a certain way because our molecules are behaving in a certain way, and they have to be in particular configurations, and
they have to follow the laws of nature. Otherwise, what defies us?
So that basically is, in a sense, a kind of a programming. However, there is a perceived sense of infinite possibilities. Let's put it that way. Okay, because nobody knows infinity, right? There's a finite number. It's so large that we perceive it as infinite. So we can actually, every single moment, we can live as if we have free will and never realize it, that we don't, because it does not matter.
Yeah, that's the same way I look at it. I don't believe there is free will, but it doesn't matter because it's all subjective. I can tell that I do or don't. But when you really study the universe or try to understand it, you kind of get to logic understanding there isn't any.
Yeah. So it's like technically there's no free will. Yes.
I think no.
Yes.
You can say technically there's no free will. Yeah. But there kind of is. It's infinite possibilities.
Listen to Sam Harris, how he talks about free will. You don't even have to go on a cosmic level. You can just go and sit down, go in an empty room where there's no voice or sound, and sit down. Who's talking in your head?
Yeah.
Who's doing all the... You start talking to yourself and you start going to random thoughts. You're not controlling anything. You're not under control.
Of course, it's God talking to me.
Something you notice that you're
silly.
Like you talked about, you're brushing your teeth, and then somehow you're thinking about something 15 years ago that you didn't. One thing led to another, and then that thought came in. You did not build that thought. It's
the bicameral mind.
That actually happened to me just today, this morning.
It's happening to me right now.
Just brushing my teeth. I always bring this up, but today was a little different. I started thinking about a week ago where a guy cut me off while I was driving.
Did you get angry?
Just something. No, I didn't get angry, but it was such a mundane thing. And I'm like, why am I thinking of this? Who triggered this thought in my mind? Like, I have no control sometimes.
Yeah.
For a second, I thought you said you were brushing your feet. I was like, what?
That's what I said.
Wow, there's another possibility.
And with feet-based.
This box is growing.
And these conversations are in the same way, where we already know a response before I know a response. Like, that's so fucking weird. Like, as you were talking, I automatically knew to say this without even me knowing I have to say this. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, if you go at that level.
Like, how are we talking right now? Where are these words coming from? I'm just speaking. I'm not even thinking about it.
I feel like it's fucking weird.
I feel like I'm having a Bernard moment right now.
Fucking stoners.
Yeah, you start glitching.
You have the makeup right now with the beard and everything.
You gotta go.
No.
Just get those glasses right down here.
Just to wipe.
Oh, there you go.
Hold on 1 second. Let me do something right here. You start glitching.
Just freeze.
How cool are those fucking laptops or whatever, like tablets that they have?
They're
so beautiful.
The folding,
like holy shit.
It's like a menu in a cheap restaurant.
Is that shit
folds
real?
like this, like that. I mean, you can, I guess. I mean, you can make now they have the foldable screens and all. They have come up even in Northwest.
Like Lenovo Yoga,
and it looks so beautiful the way it is. It just folds up and thin and
it's very
sexy
sleek.
as fuck.
It's very nice.
It's very nice.
I prefer my Dell XPS, honestly.
Oh, I was gonna say another cool, interesting thing is that like we all are in our bubbles, right? So like within our friend groups, we all are Muslims. So it's like kind of fun for me to be outside of the bubble and have two people that grew up in a different culture and religion. I kind of also wanted to talk about, like, obviously it sounds like you guys left your religion, but what were those? What were your waking moments too? Like, because our culture.
Great question.
It's a lot different than yours. So like, is it as hard for me to get out of my religion than it is yours?
It's almost like it's a little culty, like
all religion in a sense, kind of, or communities.
Scary, man.
Yeah.
Like,
I think if I can, a very significant difference between the religions like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
Yeah.
Abrahamic religions
and Dharmic religions, if you can understand. The difference is like we don't care about, like, we have so many gods and goddesses that it doesn't bother us, that if you would take your allegiance from somewhere to somewhere, then again we also have some angry gods who are on the period, like on the pill, they're off the pill or something. They haven't taken
Hinduism, like, do you know exactly? There's some crazy amount of gods, right? Like, it's like a couple.
So in India, I mean, one comedian pointed out.
We have a Chappal Devi, believe it or not.
What is that?
A goddess of footwear.
Oh, really?
No, because I mean, we are joking about it, but I mean, our religion has that many gods and goddesses. I think one comedian pointed out, and I don't want to say that this is my bit or something, but he said that at point of time it was like 4 gods to 1 person.
Right.
So that was the ratio. So it's like, so because that was the population at that point of time, and because gods have always been there, right? So he's like, oh, okay, so you're not listening today, dude. We're not friends anymore. I'll just move to this god right now. So that was like the demand and supply at that point of time. There's too much of supply of gods, less demand, and then now people are, they have these monumental, they have the tier 1 gods, tier 2 gods, just like IPL, like the tier 1 players. Everyone wants a Shiva and a Vishnu, and like Brahma did not get an idol because he he pissed off some priest.
So is there one main god, or is it then everyone just like sub-level of gods, or is there every god for different categories? Like,
no. They have roles. Like they're like 3 levels of government kind of thing. Okay. One guy makes things, one guy runs it, one guy destroys it.
What about?
There's fun part.
They're all guys.
They're all guys.
Really?
That part is there.
Well, no, just 3 made ones.
Oh, okay.
Shiva. It's Lord Shiva. Lord Brahma. We call him Brahma. Lord Vishnu, who's like more commonplace. Yeah.
What does Vishnu do? Like, because that's the name that
he's the preserver. He's called. You have the creator, preserver, and the destructor, protector,
destroyer.
Destroyer. I think.
Cool. Why is it destroyer destroying?
Big
things?
Bang, universe, and entropy would be the 3 gods.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that's a really good way. Nice. So Shiva is this guy that destroys everything with his third eye that pisses him off. Basically, everything that's anti.
So is he like the devil?
Justice.
No, but he's not like the
he's like the Punisher.
He's not like the.
Oh, really?
But he's still not like the Old Testament God. Like he's not like a jealous God or something. I think the cycle was based on something which was much more simpler. It was about like everything has a cycle.
Yeah.
So everything which has been born has to be destroyed.
That's something that
created can be destroyed, and so it recreates a new kind of cycle, and that's how he's supposed to destroy it. Like once you ripen like a fruit, almost. Which is nice. It's raw and it ripens. It's in its prime and then it rots.
Right.
So after it rots, it should be destroyed, right? And then so that the cycle comes again. I think that was the thought. Like not to I'm getting into trouble or something. I don't know.
Which god is it that, in the temple, usually I see it in the Bollywood movies, it's this epic scene, the music's going, thunder, thunder, and she comes and rings the bell 3 times. And
there's Durga, Shiva, I think Shiva, yes. Okay. Because, it's mostly destruction, right? Because he needs this arms and armaments, because he doesn't have like a Rambo friend who can give him the arms to go and fight the villain.
Oh, so you ask Shiva to help you to fight
destroy someone.
There are a lot of things. Shiva is also supposed to be the coolest guy who like smokes.
Yeah, that dude. His history is cool.
Yeah, he smokes pot in the mountain and has a lot of sex. So.
Oh yeah.
Dang.
And then
that's definitely
holy shit.
Yeah.
So you learn about that growing up.
I think
that's a cool god.
We actually have we actually have this day. There's I think a lot of girls and women also observe. Like girls actually usually that it's called Mahashivratri. It's a night in which they go and worship the Shiva. This thing, the idol worship, whatever they do it.
By the way, just FYI, that idol looks like his penis.
Oh yeah, it is. It is his penis.
It is.
It is supposed to be his penis. So it's called Ling, Shivling. So it's supposed to be his penis, and they worship that, thinking that they would get a husband as awesome as Shiva, who's so cool.
Right.
And he's like, he's supposed to, like you have. Now the thing is, if you think about our culture, these things are not supposed to be bad at that point of time, because in India before. Invasion or anything happened, people were still existing there.
Yeah,
so and it's a bountiful place and people were eating and everything. So the whole religion was based on sort of this whole comforting things, and there were tiers to people, like the caste system and everything came because it was a stagnant religion that, okay, this thing needs to be done. Someone needs to cut the crop, someone needs to milk the cows, someone needs to do this and that.
Right.
And so then that's why the caste system, which is so I think particular to Hinduism, I think the caste system is like a sort of a dharmic religion concept, right? And that's where it came in, because the strata of society kind of started getting built in. When you look at Abrahamic religions, and I'm not qualified to comment on it, but since it started from a point where there were tribes and there was a limit of resources, so you can see that there tends to be a nature of things where that, okay, if we could have this land.
Yeah.
And there was that at that point of time, I think in Islam also, they had to fight, right? Initially, he was the warlord. Muhammad was a warlord. I mean, if he was there, like, okay. And that's where the difference lies. Now, we can say that it's awesome that, as a dharmic religion, we are so peace-loving and whatever. But a system in itself, within those people, you are oppressing those people who are below you, right? And that's what human nature in the society kind of pulls in. And we still, because we also had Shudras, lowest caste of the lot, who were not, and it was kind of an apartheid situation.
Like the poor people?
The poorest,
okay.
Yeah, so there were 4 main castes, right? And it was a division based on labor. So the Brahmins, which is what I happen to be,
He's Brahmin. Yeah, I'm not.
So is it part of India that you're a Brahmin, or
it still is there? You aren't physically, like geographically, you're not divided, but societally, you are.
Okay.
So Brahmins are the people that are learned. They're poor, but they're learned, and they're the ones who are allowed to pray to the gods and worship and sacrifice things on your behalf. Then you have the Kshatriyas, who are the warriors and the kings and all that. Like basically
that's cool.
Big beefcakes. And then you had the Vaishyas, who are the merchants, traders, provider of resources.
Can people go in different levels, or you're always stuck in
I think
that
it's
level?
it's by birth, but there are very, very rare instances where you can graduate from like a Vaishya to...
So if my dad's always been a merchant, I'm by that logic, my family's going to be always play a merchant
Even
role.
If you're a doctor and you're doing something that's not...
Yeah, so the role of a doctor was shared, I guess.
Older, this is long back. Now it's not.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. And then, like, today...
The Shudras were the last one, like the lower, the ones that clean bathrooms and stuff like that.
And so is that philosophy still followed?
Yeah, it actually is. Yeah.
So is there a problem when it comes to like marriage? Like, can you marriage between castes, or is it looked down upon?
It is looked down upon in the more orthodox regions of the country.
Where it's more religious.
But then, now it's intermixed, really.
Yeah, now it really is.
Yeah,
it still is in certain places looked down upon. Like, you're going to get funny looks.
Yeah. I mean, people don't do, there's no, it doesn't go very extreme. It's just you disappoint your parents.
Yeah.
So,
right.
So,
especially
us Brahmins, we're like, the caste is
I'm not.
It's bad, yeah.
They have this whole, something called Shuddhikaran, purification ceremony. So,
right.
Like, so it's supposed to not like touch things or like not interact, whatever. So Shudras they almost, in order to explain how it comes, it's like Brahmins come from the brain, Kshatriyas are the hands, Vaishyas are the thighs, you see, and Shudras are the feet, the soul of the feet. So you're supposed to be, you attribute them to that thing.
Is that why they touch like the feet every time they see an elder?
Oh no. That's just that's more of a respect thing. Like which Shintoism in Japan also, that's how they greet, right?
That's
like
true.
you bow down. So you are supposed to lay down your ego in front, like
Right.
That's a thing. It's like almost like a salute sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
So what were your guys' waking moments to like? Because obviously, I'm guessing you guys followed it when you were younger.
Yeah, So my family is Brahmin. We're orthodox as fuck. Like,
right.
My parents will expect me to wear that thread. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but this is thread that you wear across your body. Yeah, like if you see any Bollywood movies and you see Hindu gods, they have some of them have threads. Anyway, so they're pretty orthodox. We were expected to pray all the time. I grew up in Abu Dhabi, like in the United Arab Emirates, Muslim country, but then we were isolated to this Hindu community.
Right.
And like the only exchange that I had with, non-Hindu communities was at school. My friends were either Muslim or Christian or Hindu or whatever. Most of them were Hindu, but it was like that. So they were pretty orthodox. So I grew up praying, trying to study the Vedas, learning Sanskrit, all that stuff.
Right.
And then that was in Abu Dhabi. And then I went to college in India. And then it was the same. It's just more the same. You're in the home, you're the heart of this.
Madras from Ramanujan.
Yeah, exactly. So Brahmins there are like uptight as fuck, man. Like, it's like, yeah, dude, wake up, go pray, say this guy's name 32 times in the afternoon, say it 64 in the evening, saying it 108, like that kind of stuff. And then I was in college. This is pretty funny, but I had two things.
Please tell the real story.
Satya knows the story. We've laughed about it. So there are these two moments that led me to waking up. The first was like, I was in college, and I was a stoner in college, and I didn't give a I didn't study. Like I was like, screw this, I'm gonna go play Dota and video games and all that. And then I didn't study before an exam, and then I went and I gave it. It was pretty bad. I was pretty sure I was gonna flunk. So then I went back home. I went to we have these rooms where we have these idols and pictures of Hindu gods, and we sit there and pray and light fires. I did all that shit. I lit a couple of candles. I sat there, said a few prayers. I was like, God, if I clear this exam tomorrow, I swear to you, I won't jack off for a year. because I was 16 or 15 or whatever. I don't even know. And I just discovered it. I was like, fuck it. And I was like, for you, I want to do it for you.
It's a big sacrifice, bro.
And then I ended up flunking the exam. So I was so happy that I flunked the exam.
Now he could resume.
So I was like jacking off.
No, I was like, screw this guy. I don't need this guy. Like, I have my, my free willy. Like
I can jerk off.
Hypothesis failed.
Scientific method.
So that like brought me close to the cliff. And then my parents are pretty religious. They told me to read this one book about this guy called Sai Baba. So I was reading this book. It was just a translation of what he said into English. And it was the best-selling translation of what he said into English. Okay, so I started reading that, and I was this uptight, stupid kid that thought he had fantastic English and all that. And I read that book, and the grammar was atrocious, man. Like it was bad. It was really bad. It was like, I mean, I don't even remember, but the grammar was bad. So I read that. I was like, this guy is so great. He couldn't even get a translation done right. Why the fuck am I going to follow? And I closed the book and I threw it away, and that was the end of it.
Yeah. Damn. So that's pretty cool. Well, I was going to say, like, another thing that I kind of want to get insight is, like, I'm trying to say it without trying to be rude, but, like, when being from Pakistan, being Muslim, like, how other religions mock other religions. So, like, there was a lot of mocking done, like, oh, look at it, Hinduism is a bunch of gods. There's only one God. We used to, like, look how they're wasting their time believing in so many gods. It's not even true. And then we used to believe in our bubble that our religion is true. Like, how do you guys feel about, like, Muslims? Like, did you feel like we're wasting our time and we're not praying to the right gods? Like, was that
when you guys were religious?
Yeah.
Did you think that?
It was always a case of it was always defensive on our part. We grew up. My family. I grew up in the Middle East.
Right.
Completely Muslim place. And there were several instances in school where Arab people used to come up to us and say, why do you pray to that elephant? Like, look at that funny looking dude. We're like, why the heck are you doing that? There's only one God. That's Allah. So it was always defensive for us. We never tried to, find faults in Christianity, or maybe in Christianity, but not in Islam.
Right.
And we were always like, they're aggressive. They beat their people and make them pray 5 times a day. We don't do that. We use love. Like, look at this guy, so cool, colorful, and like relatable because he's fat and shit,
Right.
That kind of stuff.
But there was no feeling of sadness that other people are probably wasting their time not believing the right thing.
No, because there's no concept of conversion to Hinduism.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we never thought that let's bring that person into the light.
Yeah,
it's just
and that comes from the point I made. Actually, we were not limited by resources at that point of time. We did not need to actually
have more people.
Yeah, have more people believe in us so that they would give us some kind of advantage.
Right.
But when you actually have a competing religion in place, and then you have competing beliefs,
it's a battle on resources.
It's a battle on resources. Then if you actually have more people, then you have a larger workforce.
And I feel like history also shows us that religions that have the idea of conversion are actually more like wartime religions. Yeah. Because we know that Islam and Christianity spread mostly through war and
initially.
And it was more for colonizing or like a civilization, like expanding their boundaries of land and territory.
It brought people together who had different motives before, but they were in a place with lesser resources to live their lives in a sustained manner. How would you tell people who, like Mongols, for example, they were not religious, even if his name was Genghis Khan or whatever, he was not religious. Genghis Khan, he was not religious, he was pretty secular. And he did not subscribe to a particular faith. But then they were warlords again. How long can they sustain, They were just like nomadic tribes and... but you want a civilization, you want to give people a code of conduct, and then that they're going to behave in a certain ordained manner, and it makes sense.
And I think having one God actually was a really easy way to unify the people. There's only one God. You bring all the tribes together.
That's what Constantine did with Christianity when Rome had conquered so many lands with so many different tribal people believing in so many different things. And they're worried about getting, obviously they're going to try to fight back and other countries are going to try to fight them. So how do I unite all my people? So he employed Christianity to get let's all believe in one God.
Yeah,
and it was important for it to be one God.
It was a political move.
Yeah,
big time political move. And that Christianity was dying out.
It didn't like spread like wildfire like we believe it did.
Yeah.
It was just stagnant. It was almost dying out until Constantine brought it back to life.
He decreed Christianity as a state religion and died.
Yeah.
So he just never lived to see it become the state religion of the Roman Empire.
And I feel like Islam being the neighboring country in the Middle East, you got a person who saw that same opportunity. And the Arabs also were looking at a religion like Christianity, which was spreading now and making all these political gains. And they're like, we need one God also to bring all the pagans together.
Right.
But if you think about it, it was more effective. I mean, Islam is probably the most successful religion. I'm not trying to support it or anything, but I'm saying it's the most successful religion because it's the most recent, largest religion. You can say that, right? 700 century or something.
The point I want to add, like, it's also beautiful and poetic. Like the religion that's not trying to go out there and convert any people. It's the longest lasting religion, which is Hinduism. It's the oldest practiced religion, was about 4,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of cool that people are not.
I think Hinduism is an offshoot of Zoroastrianism. And I think there are Zoroastrians.
Zoroastrian. I mean, it's hard to tell because they have similar concepts, but that again puts us in clash with the Egyptian gods and the Mesopotamian gods. So they are they were natural gods earlier.
Right.
And for us, the Vedas and everything came up. But even in our Vedas, if you see that, even though there is some kind of a confusion, that even though we say that you have like Shiva, like so many gods and goddesses, which seems like a weird concept. But again, the in our mythology is allows gods to be punished. That's the best part. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? Because they're emulated in the sense of a society, in a tiered society. So suppose a god does something wrong, he can be reborn as a human being, as a punishment.
Oh.
Okay?
The best example of that is the third main god, Brahma. There are no temples of him anywhere on earth. Maybe one.
Ajmer, in Ajmer, that's just a remnant.
Nobody prays him. There are no prayers about him because he was cursed by this hermit that said, dude, what the fuck, and then cursed him.
Because did not just not for some particular reason. I think what he was this in India. There's this whole at that point of time concept was I think I'm saying India as if India was at that point of time in that region you had people actually worshipping, or that's the stories how they tell, is that you do sacrifice, you do penance, and you meditate and all. And since you're sacrificing all your own wants and submitting yourself to the god, then he's supposed to come down and reward you for this. So it's like a cycle thing, It's like you work and you get fruits, which is a nice thing in itself, whatever. And that was pretty logical for people at that point of time, right? To understand. However, it was the same for gods itself. Like, so if the gods actually act out of character, so we have a lot of similarities with Zeus, the Greek mythology. So our god Indra, the god of rain and thunder, is basically Zeus. So what did Zeus do?
What did Zeus do?
And Zeus used to, Indra is also the leader of the gods.
Yeah, leader of the gods, sort of. Zeus is. So that clan. So we had 3 clans. You had like the demons, the gods, and this thing, and they're supposed to be like it's like an even balance and spread of society. It's supposed to represent that. Now, Zeus used to go and he used to get horny and used to go and sleep with someone else and then piss some other god off, and then they would fight with him. Our gods used to do that. Like Indra would go and sleep with some priestess wife and then he would curse him and then he'll get into trouble. So there are a lot of stories like that. I mean, so if you think, so now if you see our religion here, the good part about it is simpler in the sense because it's trying to emulate the lives in general of what are happening, what people want, what they do.
Scenarios are.
But when it comes into distributing the society, that's one of the major, I would say, setbacks. I am, unlike him, I'm not a Brahmin.
Right.
I don't even know what I am really. Probably a Kshatriya, I would think so, because I was not like a scheduled caste tribe. But I did not actually he has had a much more probably a rigorous religious exposure of that sense. Even though my parents were very religious, I used to be fascinated by them more than probably driven by them. I think now I understand it more better. Like, because I used to think that if I pray or I meditate, gods will come and do that. And I've done this once, like you had a power cut or something, and it used to be really warm in India. I used to sit there and meditate for 3 hours thinking, no, he'll going to come, and I'll just ask him that, can I fly or something, you know.
So when you're meditating, what are you looking for? You're just trying to get no thought, no... Like what?
Oh no! If it were that, I would have been a much more calmer and relaxed individual, I suppose. Like that would be transcendental. No, you just keep chanting Om.
Oh, you sit there, you chant, and that feeling.
Yeah. It's supposed to have resonate. Yeah, it's very psychological. Really, it doesn't matter. Really, I mean, there was nothing religious in it,
right?
Really, but I was going off of the mythological stories upon which our religion is based. For example.
Did you find it beneficial, like that you can still use it now that
but it's
fascinating religion?
No, it's just like a game. It was fascinating. I wasn't actually that religious to begin with. Right. I would say my parents are religious, but I mean I grew up in India.
Okay.
And I come from a small town. My parents, however, both of them were like. What should I say? Like I grew up with my grandma, actually. My mom was a lecturer in physics and whatever. She was in a different town at that point of time. My dad is a professor. So I kind of grew up with kids who, at that point of time, none of us really discussed or were scared of religion. Like, you know, we could swear against religion and nobody cared. Like we used to make non-veg jokes about non-veg jokes. God. It's such an Indian, it's such a colloquial term. So we used to make jokes about non-veg. Okay, yeah. So we used to make jokes about
non-veg. So it's like
it has some, like, you know, at a certain age, it's okay to make dick jokes and like jokes about sex and other things.
Oh,
you get what I'm saying? So it's like vegetarian before. It's vegetarian before.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
All right.
That's such a colloquial, reference. But we used to make fun.
Right.
We used to say this. Yeah, no,
how's like the scientific method? Like if someone, like if you're not, if you don't believe in it, you found some overwhelming information that, you know, science, like have you tried sharing it with your family or your friends, or like do you get a backlash saying, no, you're wrong, this is not true?
I do. Yeah, I've tried to talk to my parents about it, and to my mom's credit, like she tried to listen.
Yeah,
but then she defaulted to her, you know, institutional fear. Right, which is that even thinking about it is going to get her punished. Yeah, so that's the case with.
That's like the line that scares everyone off, right?
Yeah,
because I've been trying to have these talks a lot with my parents, and it's kind of interesting to see how, you know, the more I do it, the more chillax it gets. I guess the more, you know, my dad's becoming more open to it, like or listening to my ideas and reason. Yeah. But then no matter, then he gets all into it. Like I feel like I worked like 3 hours to trying to explain him how the Big Bang is. This is the theory. This is how we got here. And then he's all into it, like, oh my God, that's amazing. And he's all excited. The next day he's like, you should start praying to God. Like, God damn it. I put in like 3 hours. I thought I walked away. Like,
I think over time you just get programmed in a certain way that you just revert back to it because, you know,
the fear part comes in. Like you said.
People also find comfort in it, you know, like. Let's say a grandparent passes away, you know, that aspect that I brought up earlier, you know, does help. Oh, he's in a better place. Then you think that, okay, so he's living on. He isn't dead. That's how you reprogram your mind to deal with that suffering of losing someone.
Yeah, and waking up from the matrix, like we were saying earlier, it is everyone's personal journey.
Right.
I don't think if I was sitting here and I had no knowledge of all these facts and you were just telling me about the Big Bang and all that, I'd be like, yeah, this is cool. But I wouldn't change for it. I don't think so. You still have to go through these moments, this experience in your life,
right?
Which can't be just told to you. You have to experience it,
right?
To change.
It has to come from within, right?
Yeah, right.
I also feel like part of it is that he is older, and you know, at that point, do you want to be wrong and go to hell? Like, you know, that also plays a role too. Like, shit, yeah, okay, this information is cool, but fuck, man, if I'm wrong, or if there's if there's God testing me, of like the devil's coming here giving me all this information, just segue me off. I'm almost at the end. I'm almost at the finish line.
If you think about it, isn't that so petty of God?
Yeah,
like, it's like
exactly.
You don't like me. Why?
Yeah,
you're mad as hell.
Oh my gosh.
You didn't listen to me, you're gonna burn in hell.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have Hubble telescope now. We can look into the cosmos, and I don't see hell or heaven. I don't see the gods.
So why do people still prescribe to these thoughts?
Well, they could be 4-dimensional beings, and we just can't see it. We're living.
So God is possible.
I think it's
anything's possible.
Yeah. So God can be one of the billion or trillion possibilities, but it seems like such a simple answer. It's hard to digest when the life is so complex and beautiful.
Right.
I would rather want a much more elegant solution. That's what.
I mean, religion just seems like anything that we couldn't answer, we just were like, oh God.
That's absolutely what it is.
That's exactly.
That's what religion is. That's why you have a thunder god. That's why you have a sea god.
Yeah. Chappal Devi.
Yeah, Chappal Devi.
I mean, I was gonna say, like, how we were talking about earlier, like before, like how gravity is both a law and a theory, and the theories we can explain it, so then you can just say, oh, God is doing it. That's the answer. Like we can't. There's only so much truth that we can only know in the universe, and anything else that we don't, someone will always, no matter what all the science and fact, will say, okay, there has to be a God.
It's funny.
But then there's one rebuttal that I have. Then who made God? Why are you only going to stop there? You're going to say, okay,
you have to go forth.
Yeah, you can't fix that solution by saying God made it, but you can not also answer who made God, because that's even a more complex answer to answer than what is driving gravity.
When two people love each other very much,
the Big Bang happens, right?
Big
Bang, bang, bang.
I like what Neil deGrasse Tyson says about religion. He says that all religion exists on the fringes of science, or the unknowable things. Anything you don't know, you just say it's God. Yeah. And then as you have more information, that just starts to go away slowly.
Sounds like you just get lazy.
Yeah. God starts having lesser and lesser responsibilities. Yeah. Earlier, he was responsible for this does thunder. And that. And it's like, airplanes can fly. Sun produces energy because of nuclear fission.
Oh, no more God.
So, God was working like full-time, overtime in the beginning. Now his job is got to...
Now he's like part-time.
He's a part-time employee in the world.
He's going to be... No, he's only on call.
Soon he's going to be on pension.
He's like unemployed.
Yeah.
He's going to file for unemployment tax.
Professor Emeritus.
Yeah.
Bankruptcy.
He's going to go to a different timeline and start fucking...
But
or he'll destroy the universe and restart it.
Speaking of that, like I don't think I ever understood the multiverse theory. Like
multiverse theory is the best.
I don't think I ever understood that.
I love that
theory. It's a good time.
What is that?
So for us, the way we've talked about it in the podcast before. So how it comes from is, from the beginning, we've always thought, like, hey, we're on this planet, we're on Earth. We might be the only planet in the world. But then as you start looking outside, you realize there's more planets. You're like, okay, there's more planets. Then you realize that, hey, there's that star, it's the sun. You don't realize that there's other suns, billions of stars, that there's other galaxies. And then you finally come to the point right now where we're like, hey, this is the only universe. But then there's never been one of anything. So the possibility that there's another universe right next to us, it's very...
It has to be.
It has to be almost.
Is there any indication?
No, that's the Fermi's paradox, I think. That's what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, the Fermi paradox can tie into it as well.
Yeah.
No, there's also...
possibilities versus proof, right? That's what...
It's theoretical now. I think... what's that particle fever? That's that documentary on
Hadron Collider. That
have you seen it?
I think so. Yeah.
So in there, there's two guys. That one guy's in camp of multiverse and one guy in supersymmetry. Okay. And when they were saying when they discovered the Higgs boson recently in 2013, it was only when they collided the particles together. It was not with a lot of energy. It was just only enough that we had that time that we discovered the Higgs boson.
Okay.
But there's a different... They were saying like the level of whatever the measurement is. I think they measured it at 115. If it goes to 127, it kind of segues into a multiverse theory. And if it goes into lower than that, it has to be between a range. And based on what the range, the higher or lower, will either dictate how our beginning of the universe is.
Yeah.
So there are some
possibilities. Yes.
So like the way I was listening to Sam Harris' podcast. I forgot which one it is, but one of the professors was on it. I think it's from MIT or something like that, and he was talking about how when I used to vision multiverse, it would be we all think of bubbles that are next to it, and he's saying there is no such thing as bubble. It's just all one space time. And you have patches of universes that are just so far apart another that
they're like all islands.
Yeah, they're just all islands and they'll never interconnect. And there's infinite of them.
But they can be affected by gravity.
Yeah,
by each other's gravity?
No, because if it's a space-time and you actually have a distortion. I mean, pockets of distortion.
Right.
Then if something happens here, then this wave can affect this, which would be super awesome. It
could destroy us too, though.
Yeah, it can, but it's not like the thing is it rearranges itself. We are unable to think about it in that scale. Like if that's so large,
it's too far fetched. So you have to kind of vision it. For me, I try to bring it back down and just picture a bed sheet like that. Just bring it back to one dimensional, and that bed sheet is infinite, and then you just have patches of universes. And they were trying to explain how the Big Bang could have happened is just that there's these laws of nature. Is the bed sheet, and they're just there, right? Even when there's nothing, there's
something there.
There's laws,
and
these laws exist. So when you snap your finger, it makes that sound. The air compression happens, and makes that sound. So it's the same philosophy behind infinite space, which is nothing but laws of nature. You can have a wave of laws of nature just moving like a wave, and something happens where they might collide, or there might be a compression that it just turns on like a chemical reaction and boom, explodes.
It's a
and that explosion based on the temperature, the pressure, it can create universes, and each universe can be different based on the energy that was input into it. So like our universe had X amount of energy, and because of it we have gravity and matter, and antimatter didn't win.
Whichever energy wins, etc.
Yeah. So when you have different levels of like this infinite sea of space, different levels of
we might have another universe which is completely comprises of antimatter.
Yeah. It could, so that's what I'm trying to say. Like each patch of universe, based on the Big Bang or whatever that happens, it'll be just completely different laws of nature.
Well, the multiverse theory, I don't know whether the Big Bang then subscribes to. The Big Bang subscribes for our universe. So we came out of a black hole or something. Like suppose there was a black hole kind of situation from where our universe popped out.
Right.
But then that black hole can be in the larger time space where...
Right. It's this exploding star, if you will, and within that sea of nothingness.
Yeah.
So the one relation that the multiverse does have with the Big Bang that I've read about is that we were talking about symmetry, right?
Right.
So at the moment of the Big Bang, everything was not that symmetrical. There were some gaps, right? And when you have some gaps and you see how much the universe is expanding, that means that you will also have that gap become infinitely large.
A lot of entropy.
Yeah. So the horizon that we see, and we see that might be our horizon, we think that there's nothing beyond it,
like
that might be the Big Bang, but it could just be our island, and there could be another universe beyond that.
Because we can't see beyond that,
Right.
What's
possible.
The ocean look like?
So, but do you... Sorry, go ahead.
So the way I always picture the multiverse theory, and it just makes so much sense to me, is that there's always a backdrop, right? So, there's world, there's, suns, and then what's the backdrop to that is our universe. And then there's got to be a backdrop to that because there's always more. It keeps going. There's infinite, right? There's got to be, like, if there's worlds, then there's galaxies, then there's universes.
See, but that is inductive though. That's the thing.
Yeah, the way he's implying.
Yeah. No, but I mean that's the thing, and that's why multiverse theory, whether it exists or not exists, it's very hard to prove it. And
at the moment,
I don't. I don't have a preference for either. Really, you just know that there's no creationism, and I'm fine with that.
Isn't there?
I want to go back to really quick to the Big Bang because I feel like we didn't really go into detail with that. So exactly. Because the Big Bang, we call it that, but it's not an explosion. It was just an expansion of everything. And it was actually the expansion of space itself.
Yeah.
Almost
space-time.
Expanding into itself.
Yeah.
So just that thought makes you believe that if it's just space expanding into itself, surely the whatever content it has in the beginning will also be going into different... almost bunches.
Yeah, but the content, the way we know mass and material is what we see around ourselves. But mass does not... Like, what is mass? That's the question there. What mass... if you have just energy,
right?
It's tightly packed energy, pocket of energy, that that divided itself into, say, for example, matter and antimatter, E is equal to mc square, that kind of theory. And at that point of time, when you're talking about, it's just mass in the form of energy, which is there. It's a condensed state. So there is no actual particles hitting each other, maybe.
Right.
But it's just energy. It's the state of mass represented by energy. And
so that means where energy would be where atoms are jiggling, right? So they're creating this reaction.
Yeah, but there are no atoms also. Atom is even like there's about atomic particles. Suppose when it's very hard to understand when we think about something from nothing, we say.
Yeah.
So suppose you have energy is basically a state or a capacity to do some kind of work. That's how we learned it. I think at school.
So we can talk about like kinetic energy or potential energy, right?
Yeah. The potential to actually deliver that energy to do something else. The kinetic energy is actually having that state of motion, for example. But energy is a state. Suppose you actually have some value of energy, for example, even if you start up with it. Even actually, I think the current theory states that the universe was at zero energy. But there can be fluctuations.
Right.
Which at that point of time would actually make energy be converted into mass, antimatter and matter, and they were this process was going in cycles.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about that state. Yeah.
So you're saying if it was a zero state energy,
and actually if it was like just static zero energy, then nothing would have happened. But
so I guess like for our listeners that might not know more, I think so like every when we weigh something, we're not only weighing the mass, but we're also weighing the
gravitational pull
and energy and potential energy that they have. I think one of the good examples that I've learned in the past is if you have 2 wine clocks, right?
Yeah.
And if you weigh them, let's say one clock, it's not moving, it's not ticking at all. But you take the other clock, you wind it all the way up. Now
the winded clock would weigh more.
It will weigh more because when you're winding it, you're compressing the springs inside the clock.
Yeah.
So that's energy that you're restraining in it, and that energy also weighs more.
Yes.
That energy is so light that
we are not able to.
Yeah, we're not able to see it, or feel it. But there are some sensitive scales that can measure that. Hey, the clock that's ticking weighs more than the clock that's not ticking because they both have the same atoms that they're made of, but the other one has more energy in it. So the atoms is and the way that the clock is ticking, that energy also has to be computed in.
So when we measure actually mass, we actually measure energy. That's the concept. Mass.
Right. So when we ourselves weigh ourselves in a thing, we're not only weighing our atoms that make us, we're also
the states of the atom and how the atoms are interacting with each other.
Some European like food, like we'll have nutritional facts here. Over there, they'll have like how many kilojoules something has.
Yes,
and
exactly.
I was like, what?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The mass. Yeah, that's a nice way to actually explain that. When you say food and they say like what it constitutes of, it's not that accurate. It's not MC square. They're not actually talking about it's amount of energy you can release or unlock from the stored chemical energy, which is present in the food, for example.
And then also like now tying this back to the Big Bang, we're saying so mass could possibly come out of energy. Is that what you're trying to indicate?
Yes.
Mass does come out of energy.
Huh?
Yeah.
Mass does come out. Right?
Yeah.
I ate that cookie and I feel more massive.
So. Well, what's that one cool what is it, particle or hydrogen atom? Or it weighs more less.
Yeah.
It has negative energy, so it reduces. So like how atoms have the same amount of pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and then you also have to add energy so that you take the weight of the atom plus the energy is what you get the weight. But I think with the hydrogen atom, the way
actually, so it's the 2 hydrogen atoms will weighs more than a hydrogen molecule. I think that's what it means. So now 2 hydrogen atoms just separately you weigh them.
Yeah.
And then you take a hydrogen molecule where your configuration of the electrons which are being shared by 2 hydrogen atoms to create a bond, the hydrogen gas, which we call the H2 molecule.
Right.
It would weigh less, I think.
It will be less. I forgot what that is because ones that do connect, now their energy is not being used as much.
And there is since there are 2, I think. Yeah, so the potential energy between them reduces.
Yeah, that's what it is. So isn't that fucking crazy?
Since negative energy...
So the hydrogen atom is negative energy. So it's Jeb Bush.
So negative.
Negative Nancy.
Yeah.
But isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but so coming back to the original point that you were asking about is that what the Big Bang started from was just an accumulation of all of the energy in the universe into the most compact possible particle.
Yeah.
And isn't it possible that there was another universe before that as well?
It's just possible, but
and that it got into that state at some point?
Yeah, but we count our time from Big Bang,
Right.
So that's why we are not able to...
So for us, that's the start of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's where space-time started. So, there was nothing before
I think natural law breaks down, right? When you get to the point of the Big Bang, natural law doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
We can't really understand it.
It just collapsed.
Singularity, essentially.
The law doesn't collapse. Our information of it collapses.
Our interpretation of natural law.
Yeah, our laws don't make sense that we know right now.
Yeah, because there's some missing information. So let's say the laws that we have is a car. When it gets to that point, if it gets a flat tire, doesn't mean we're gonna go out and get a new car. We just need to replace this tire with something new that helps us understand why this is collapsing.
Yeah, modify the law.
Yeah. Right. So that's the point I want to emphasize. I was telling about my brother-in-law and him saying, all theories are always changing. So what are some value of me believing in it now? The people need to understand that the whole thing is not turning 180. It's still the same pieces that, like a car analogy. It's still the same car. We just changed the tire.
Yeah, keep getting clues.
Yeah, so we didn't completely change our theory. It's just that we modified it to make it more compatible with what our observation in the universe is.
It fits with the standing on the shoulders of a giant. That you're just increasing the height of the giant or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what people need to keep in mind. Theories are amazing. Because of them, we have everything.
And if you're following a theory, you're still on the path to getting closer to the truth.
Right.
So that's the benefit in itself.
Wait, the most popular thing in the world is a theory, religion.
No, it won't be religion. Because theory, no, it's not. Because that won't be a theory. It's not even a theory, I would say. Theory is built with proof facts. Hypotheses are confirmed. Right. You can confirm that in Christianity the earth is 6,000 years old when there's that hypothesis itself collapses.
It's more of a fiction.
There was a guy who walked on water, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even then that religion didn't really spread for some reason, even after seeing that.
Yeah. I mean,
so it's not religion is not a theory, it's more of a philosophy or ideology. Right.
I'm sorry, I'll never talk again.
Okay. But when you say something is also a theory, it also has to have science involved in it one way or another.
I understand.
And the scientific method, right?
Science that informed the hypothesis that led
that leads
you have to have some backing.
Yeah, I can't just say what because that's I think the part of the problem is people just think some guy just in his basement made up this theory, but they're forgetting that it's the building blocks of it are confirmed hypotheses, and which are AKA also known as facts, right?
Yeah.
So do you guys believe that? Do you guys think was there a point where nothing comes from everything, or everything always has? Like,
no, the thing is, how do you define nothing? That's where it's not about philosophy,
zero.
But scientifically, how do you say when?
Yeah, because
nothing is actually our perception of nothing is nothing. Like because we can't subscribe. Is right. Actually, I mean that's true. Our concept of nothing or the concept of zero, so absence of some. Our concept of nothing is based on the fact that something is absent.
Exactly.
Right. You get what I'm saying? We are not coming from the approach that nothing is there and we knew about nothing. The fact that something was there and something is not there, that is where the concept of nothing comes to play. So, in that sense, how do we know what's nothing? But
it has to be either or, right? So if you logically think about it.
Yeah, if something transforms into something, I
like this quote a lot, which says that nothing is dreamed up by people living in the universe of something.
Yeah.
And where you're saying that it has to be either one, I really feel like there's a limit to our understanding of the universe.
Yeah.
Like you always say, the universe is not there for us to understand.
Right.
We can keep trying, but we think that either has to be this or this, but it could be something completely different that we just don't have the computing power to understand. So
that's another angle of looking at it too. Of course, like the fact. So I mean, it could be. I'm trying to resort back. So if I take everything away, take laws of natures away, because even if I get to nothing, then I was saying earlier, there's laws of natures in place, so that's still something. Yeah. So I would have to even take that away, and then where the fuck did these laws of natures come in?
Yeah, because it bothers us that there is no sense of beginning somewhere.
You know, for me, it's
we
fine.
We have to create that relative point.
To be quite honest, I'm okay with whatever the answer is.
Suppose there is a substance which is invisible to you, imperceptible to you,
right?
Which you cannot gauge by any means available to us. The top scientists, everyone,
right?
We can't see it. We can't feel it.
Like the Wi-Fi, we can't see it. If we don't have the technology, you can't detect it.
We can't see it. So but then it transforms into something which we can see, or which we can feel, or which we can gain from. So now,
it's something.
Then for us, suddenly it came out of nothing right now.
Right. But it always has been there.
But it has always been there. Yeah. Right. I mean, that can be one of the things which is possible. I'm not a scientist. I'm not saying.
You are now. That was good.
That's a good.
That's the big bounce theory, actually. That there's always the big bounce theory, that there's always something been there. There's never been a point where nothing's existed.
Is nothing just the complete absence of energy?
I think it would be absolutely nothing. No laws. It's like a vacuum.
Yeah, right? Even the energy needs laws too, right? So laws have to come first before the energy.
Yeah.
So laws are the more fundamental thing.
The absence of laws.
I mean, even he said for nothing to exist, you need something.
That's what I'm saying. Because you don't need to actually have the word nothing.
Right.
But we need it in our lives
to have this conversation
to say that something is absent.
To have a beginning, like you said.
It's a concept.
Why are you so bothered about a beginning, right? Temporal, we want temporal beginning, that we want time to start. So we want spatial beginning.
Right. So for me, I feel like it always has. Like it always has to be. And whatever the answer is, it doesn't, for me personally, doesn't bother. I'm more curious to know what philosophical approach that the universe took.
Yeah, I mean that I think. I mean, I'm obviously. I mean, I'm still. I don't have the answer.
I don't think anyone does.
So
is the concept of nothing a theory?
You could, I guess, to a point. Like we can take our current. I guess if you were trying to do the Big Bang, undo it.
We can't test it.
No, we can't. That's what theories,
you
right?
Need something to test nothing.
Theories is you get to a point where you have these.
That's a good point.
You need something to test nothing.
Collapse the universe.
We won't be here.
We might be really sounding dumb because of our discussion this way. Obviously, we don't know. There might be some guy in the physics lab who's like, God, these guys don't even know the concept of nothing right now.
Yeah, but he should understand that we're at least curious enough to be.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. No. But I mean, now that you've asked the question, now I'm like getting the itch. Like I'm itching to find out now.
Yeah.
If there is something which we skipped in our understanding of it. Like I'm making it completely philosophical right now.
Yes, I think that's the only approach we can take.
It's a perception based thing, right? I mean, we had something and then we had nothing.
But it's like saying that what came first, the chicken or the egg. Is there a scientific answer to that yet, or what?
Well, definitely the chicken, because
it's the egg.
Something would have had to evolve over a long period of time into a chicken, and then
is that something you study in biology?
But reptiles were also laying eggs, so a bird could have come out of that.
Oh yeah, so it could have been linked there too.
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't listen to that. I got confused. No, I was saying, is there something in biology when you were studying it that kind of tackles that answer? What came first, chicken or the egg?
Did you
the reptile?
Bio.
Well, I mean, now is there something like thought experiments that you've done in school? Like
no. But now that you think about it, if you think about it right now in the confines of like evolution and the origin of life and all that, it definitely has to be the egg, right? Because
explain. I don't know.
Go ahead.
It has to be the egg. I agree.
Yeah,
I said egg too.
The first ever chicken that came
out from an egg.
Came out from an egg, which was created or laid by the precursor of the chicken, which was
good point.
Proto chicken.
That's what I was saying.
Make that one into a burger.
Because for a species to survive, let's talk about from the evolutionary standpoint. For a species to survive, it should have some features based on whatever gene pool they came from or whatever happened during their reproduction. That they would have certain features which would help them mitigate some kind of problem, which puts them at an advantage as compared to their own competitors, right? So now, since the prehistoric animals, most of them used to lay eggs. Mammals came much later, if you think about it. I think even the dinosaurs, Jurassic Age and everything, we still have eggs, right? So it would make sense that there was one semi-reptilian bird which came out and it could use its wings or whatever appendages at that point of time.
Yeah, and it's not like anything's going to shapeshift. Like I'm walking around just like, and just turn into something else and evolve.
Yeah, it's not like werewolf. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had to have been something happened, something mutated in this pre-bird, whatever, proto-bird, and then it laid an egg.
The fact that...
so proto-bird came first.
Proto-bird. Yeah, I mean that in line of reasoning we can say that because as I think initially when we were talking about evolution, that's what we thought, right? Because DNA is forming at that point of time. It's a small amount of mismatch or anything, and you actually have different species, different species you can say, or different creature,
right?
And then it exhibits that in a physical manifestation of like appendages or wings. So it might make sense.
That's a good answer. It's already like clicking in my head. Like I never thought about it that much, but like it's cool too. But you think about it, chicken or egg. You kind of joke about it, but when you really break it down in a evolution aspect and see,
anything else you would like for us to solve for you? Did you ever wondered?
Is there a God?
Oh boy.
I guess. We are approaching our third hour.
Let's wait for Z to come back.
Yeah,
it'd be funny to just close out.
Yeah, like, bye guys.
No one's here when he comes back.
There's nothing when he comes back.
There's nothing.
Oh, man.
WestWorld.
Answer this question.
WestWorld, guys. WestWorld in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I got a wedding to attend, so I don't think I'll catch it. It's probably gonna be
Okay,
tomorrow.
so we'll not spoil it for you.
Yeah. But I think we had a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, it's good. It's good, man.
It's great.
Yeah.
We should do it again sometime.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Some other thing.
Another subject, something else. Donald Trump does something. Yeah.
Totally.
Reconvene.
I'm always doing good things. Did you see the SNL the SNL skit yesterday with the tweet thing? They did another sketch on Donald Trump, and Donald Trump said, "So bad." That's totally so and then
this was like 2 weeks ago, I think, right? Or is this the one that did
yesterday?
Oh, they did another one?
Yeah.
Every Saturday.
Alec Baldwin, it's a tweet.
Alec Baldwin is doing an amazing job.
Yeah, he's tweeting it. Kellyanne, what are they saying about me? Am I so cool? He does it in a robotic way.
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
Lying, New York Times, lying.
You're doing a pretty good job too.
You're hired.
We're just in our closing comments.
Oh, okay.
Or you want to keep going?
No, I'm good, man. Let's.
Good one.
How far have we been?
We approached our third hour in 3 minutes.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and when we have these cool conversations, it doesn't feel like that much time has passed. It just feels like it's been a snap of a
Only
finger.
like there's no light left in the room. We're relying on the sun. We have to sacrifice someone
to keep it going. But
closing comment is death.
Is death going into nothing?
What?
Like when you die, do you go into nothing?
Nope, you recycle.
No, but
we're still energy. We're still
But then, if you're saying nothing, then there should be a presence of a soul for nothing, whatever.
Want to debate this for an hour, guys? No, I'm kidding.
Totally appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks
for having us, man. It was fun.
That was awesome.
That was a lot better than I expected. Like, I didn't have expectations.
Did you learn nothing?
I learned something.
I learned nothing.
Yeah, it's. I can understand. It might be difficult to think that it might be difficult to drive a particular topic for a long time because all of us are kind of emptying our shit here.
Yeah.
In a certain sense, right?
Yeah.
Like we are, right?
I think it's like productive shit though. Is that right?
Brain dump.
No, it's good. Yeah, it's good.
Shit is productive. So.
Shit's good.
It allows you to go and do more.
It's detoxifying.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate it again.
Yeah. In my closing comments, I just want to say, everyone keep experiencing the world and keep asking questions.
Don't stop asking.
Can I ask another question? No, cut me off.
Peace out.
All right, guys. Later.
Good stuff.
Thanks.